top 100 found footage hidden gems.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Movie Blues. I am your host DS Lyons, and today on the show I am very proud to present to you a supercut of all 100 found footage recommendations that I've covered on my channel over 2 years across 7 different videos. And for those of you who've already seen my found footage videos, I've added the extra element of ranking these films from worst to best, from 100 to 1. That being said, I recommended all these movies to begin with, so I think you should watch all 100, but just in case you're looking for the real choice nugs, I've ranked these movies by their quality and overall importance to the genre at large. So the closer we get to that number 1 spot, the more important it is for you to check out the hidden gem in question. Without further ado, here are 100 of the best found footage hidden gems, ranked from worst to best.
Number 100, The Outwaters.
I struggled to put this movie on the list, and I truly can't decide if it's the worst fucking found footage movie I've ever seen or not, but for sure there is something worth investigating about this new found footage film, The Outwaters, which kind of plays like Skinamarink by way of ketamine. It's just such an off-putting, disorienting, abstract, and bananas experience that I cannot fully say that I recommend it. But I feel like if you are a true genre completionist, you owe it to yourself to suffer through this one.
And suffer, you will.
Because this movie had such an exhausting, tensionless setup that goes on for so godforsakenly long, and I had to hear this nitwit sing her folk song so many goddamn times, that by the end of the movie, the sound of her voice made me just fill up with cosmic ancient rage. This movie starts with a crew of kids who head into the middle of nowhere to shoot a music video, and from there, the sparks begin to fly. What happens next defies explanation, common sense, logic, or narrative. It's just truly up to the viewer in a way quite uncommon in the genre to decide what the fuck was even going on. This is a Lynchian fever dream, an odyssey of pain, and a found footage spectacle that plays like the torture scenes from Event Horizon stretched to fit a runtime. Just a wildly fucking bonkers movie in all ways, good and bad, and something that will challenge you and most likely leave you disgusted, violated, and puzzled beyond belief. But in this day and age, if it makes you feel anything at the level of disgust that I felt towards this movie, it should be recommended. Watch this one at your own risk, but I can guarantee you'll never see anything like it again. Thank God.
Number 99, Resurrected.
So, man, I'm putting this movie on the list because it's so insanely baffling and ambitious. I've never really seen anything quite like this one before, so I'm not sure if this is a full send recommendation or merely just a call to arms for my fellow cinephiles to investigate. But yeah, Resurrected, what a fucking movie. I don't want to spoil too much of this one, especially since it's kind of brand new, but this film is basically like if Black Mirror went to Bible camp. Anyway, we're introduced to a world in an opening 20 minutes that seems to do a ridiculous amount of world building, where resurrecting dead loved ones has become possible. The kinds of moral and ethical quandaries reminiscent of The Leftovers are dealt with by way of mixed media, found footage, news segments, and Skype calls. Another low-budget film attempting to paint a massively scoped canvas in its brief runtime, Resurrected is an awfully creepy, unexpected, and wholly different found footage experience than the usual fare. Although it's got, the usual trappings, cheap acting, and some rapture-sized plot holes, Resurrected is unlike anything on this list, and it's worth a watch for the found footage faithful.
Number 98, Spiral Drive.
Every now and then, as I research selections for these videos, I come across a movie that feels like something you'd make with your buddies in high school. The kind of found footage film with a budget so low that you're basically watching people play pretend in the woods with no crew, no real sets, and barely $1 on screen. While you can easily dismiss a movie like Spiral Drive as a no-budget student film, I wanted to include it in this video because it highlights what is so accessible and awesome about this genre for new and aspiring filmmakers. Spiral Drive chronicles a road trip with two estranged friends who are moving to LA to chase their dreams of working in Hollywood. Soon after the trip begins, we find out that one of the guys is hiding some big secrets from the other, and this tension becomes the centerpiece of the film as the boys become hopelessly lost on their trip, eventually encountering a creature beyond their comprehension. Spiral Drive has some entry-level acting, sure.
Yep, he's an actor.
But it's also a cleverly written movie with some surprisingly well-done special effects, and with some actually engaging creature lore. Now, I wouldn't exactly say that this is the next Milk and Cereal, but it did remind me of that film's DIY approach and obviously earnest creatives behind the scenes. If you're looking for a truly ambitious, free, and hour-long found footage movie, this is a great little film that shows a lot of potential in the people who made it. I laughed quite a few times watching this. I felt that the tension was pretty palpable, not only with the creature stuff, but also between the two leads. Like, their relationship was really tense and awkward, and really fun to watch. And yeah, I was just damn proud of these guys for making such an engaging project out of literal pennies on the dollar. For another stirring example of how found footage is something we can all create and believe in, then watch Spiral Drive for some real amateur inspiration.
Number 97. Mockingbird.
Next up on our list is Mockingbird, a film from director Brian Bertino, who previously wrote and directed the hit horror film The Strangers, as well as writing the recent horror movie The Dark and the Wicked. This is a pared-down, brutal little mind game of a found footage movie that follows three groups of people, all of whom have found a video camera on their doorstep and begin filming under the impression that this is the key to winning money from a mysterious competition. Bloody mayhem and chaos follow, with some interesting third-act twists that play with perspective. Maybe not the best that this list has to offer, but this movie was for sure a memorable and nasty watch. Surely this idea could have been executed better, but as it stands, it's a interesting, almost anthology-esque little horror experiment that I really appreciated and thought was pretty fucked up.
Number 96. The Jungle.
What do you think of this area we're going to?
People and animals, they just disappeared there.
What is it?
Something watching us.
This is a straightforward, uncomplicated creature feature from the director of one of my favorite killer crocodile movies ever, the Australian film Black Water. While that movie is far better than this, it isn't found footage, so for the next best thing, we have this director's next feature, The Jungle from 2013. Following a pair of brothers who are wildlife experts chasing after a reclusive leopard in the Indonesian jungle, things go from bad to worse when one of the brothers develops an Ahab complex and decides to push the party further into the jungle interior despite the mounting evidence of an unseen predator. A lush location and some great creature FX moments were enough to make this a memorable ride. As long as you're not expecting anything too far beyond a Blair Witch-style romp in the jungle, then you should probably enjoy this movie well enough. The Jungle kind of reminded me of the fantastic found footage TV series The River, R.I.P., gone too soon. It was a show that I missed terribly after it was canceled before it found its footing. But yeah, like jungle, found footage, safari, demon adventure type vibes. Despite its lack of plotting and a minimal amount of creature action, this is still a fairly convincing found footage movie with dedicated actors in a dangerous real setting. Feeling almost like the cross-section between a Steve Irwin segment and a cryptid movie, The Jungle is a serviceable and brisk found footage horror film with a memorable antagonist and a few awesome jump scares to keep things tense until the final act. For some isolated jungle madness ripe with jagged teeth and snarling menace, The Jungle is a doomed safari that you can't look away from.
Number 95. Nightlight.
Just when you thought you've seen everything that a Lost in the Woods found footage movie has to offer, here comes Nightlight to bring us all back to that Blair Witch season. So I walked into this one quite skeptical, and even during its initial 20 minutes of setup, I thought we'd be dealing with another completely disposable, shaky cam in the woods found footage stinker. But boy did I underestimate the power of Nightlight. This movie does what the best of the more basic found footage movies excel at: non-stop scares and truly creative filmmaking. After about 40 minutes into this thing, it's literally scare after scare. With our gang of hopeless, sex-crazed teens being dispatched by the spirits of the woods in all of the most brutal and awe-inspiring ways. This movie has a handful of truly rollicking scares, all accompanied by insanely creative camera work and believable FX. This one might be derivative of the Blair Witch Project, but it surely unnerved me more than the 2016 Blair Witch remake, which probably had 5 times the budget as this movie. You may think you've seen enough movies about a teen trip into a mysterious forest that goes left quick, but Nightlight makes a strong case for watching the brutal fallout. A truly scary, scare-filled, and stress-inducing trip to the woods with some great twists, and actually solid characterization. This is a simple, top-tier found-footage horror movie that doesn't reinvent the wheel, but will definitely get under your skin. Quick.
Number 94. Aliens Zone of Silence.
This area referred to by the locals as the Zona del Silencio.
The found footage market is positively flooded with alien movies, and while most of them are woefully anticlimactic and mostly poorly made, Zone of Silence managed to do quite a lot with a threadbare budget. Utilizing some emerging new camera technology amongst a convincing and isolated setting, Zone of Silence goes to some pretty tense places and has some pretty great reveals. It's all pretty standard stuff as the main character Morgan's brother Hal vanishes in the remote Mexican desert, setting Morgan out on a quest to uncover the truth about his disappearance. While it might be nothing you've never seen before, the Zone of Silence is a tense, well-made, and memorable effort nonetheless. Lots of great desert photography and some truly nail-biting set pieces elevate this found footage alien film into a movie worth your time.
Number 93. Lucky Bastard.
Lucky bastard. Fucker for your country.
I covered this one on my channel as a full video that you should check out immediately, but Lucky Bastard is a 2013 found footage film about an amateur adult website series that casts one lucky fan per episode to sleep with an adult film star. Although this episode, they seem to have picked the wrong bastard. This is the first true NC-17 rated found footage horror movie, and it's a doozy. While it can be appreciated as a raunchy comedy at times, Lucky Bastard develops into a legitimately brutal horror movie, with some incredibly effective kills and an overall vicious vibe that I appreciated. Graphic, funny, gory, and actually made with a decent budget, Lucky Bastard is a surprisingly unique and utterly campy found footage movie that feels like the cross-section between Boogie Nights, Showgirls, and the framework of a classic found footage horror slasher. A shocking, brazen, and memorable piece of high camp that is made surprisingly well, and hits surprisingly hard. For the found footage fans who really feel like they've seen it all, Lucky Bastard is a welcome and often ludicrous entry into the genre.
Number 92. Chest.
Director Aaron Irons' film Chest isn't free from the classic tropes that infest every Lost in the Woods found footage movie. But it still managed to eke out a bevy of great set pieces and reveals despite its familiar trappings. A documentary team heads to the East Tennessee mountains to investigate the legend of an infamously cursed box, a mystery that steadfastly leads the team to their doom. There are some really hardcore and unexpected moments of brutality in this one. And while it doesn't do much to shirk its Blair Witchy surroundings, the film's final act packs enough of a punch to make the ride well worth it. Like many of these movies, the budget is bare and the setup might test your patience, but the ending was walloping enough to recommend this movie to anybody looking for another deadly romp in the woods. Also, I don't care what the occasion is. If you find this fucking thing in a cave in the middle of the woods while you're already totally screwed, don't open it. Who would ever open it? Don't open it. Just don't do that. That's really dumb.
Number 91, Digging Up the Marrow.
Our first selection is Digging Up the Marrow from Adam Green, director of the fantastic slasher series Hatchet, as well as Frozen. No, not that one, the one where everyone dies on a ski lift. Digging Up the Marrow is a collaboration between Green and horror artist Alex Pardee, who approached Green at a movie convention with a book of illustrations called Digging Up the Marrow, with a light story attached about a man who had uncovered a place on Earth where monsters were emerging. Pardee and Green combined forces to create this film, which uses Pardee's work for its ingenious, practical monster design. This one kind of makes you wait for it, but there's some really original ideas throughout, and of course some truly excellent creature costumes.
Number 90, My Little Eye.
My Little Eye is a 2002 hidden camera Big Brother reality show type found footage movie, featuring a handful of horny and broed out early 2000s chads as they spend 6 months in an isolated cabin in the woods. If they manage to survive their 6-month stint, they will be rewarded with $1 million as a group to split amongst themselves, so long as nobody leaves the house before the 6-month period is up. Soon, the shadowy producers of the show start to mess around with the minds of our real-world style cast, causing everyone to slowly unhinge and turn on each other for the grand prize. This is a pretty old found footage movie, and as such, it has a real early 2000s MTV vibe that I found rather nostalgic. Originally, this film was available on DVD with a function to control the cameras yourself, switching around the house and watching the movie unfold from your own point of view, which I think is such a fun and awesome idea, and while that feature is no longer available, the movie is edited together and can be found for free on YouTube, so I can only really review the fully edited project here, but regardless, this isn't a deep thinking piece or something that changed the genre forever, but it's instead a horny slasher movie with an increasingly tense vibe as housemates begin to unravel, like any good reality TV show. A solid budget, fun setting, and even a surprise appearance by Oscar award winner Bradley Cooper makes My Little Eye a fun and occasionally surprising hour and a half that feels like a crossbreed between Big Brother and Squid Game. For a chance at $1 million and a fun night on the couch, check out My Little Eye.
Number 89, Uru Hora.
Fans of my earlier found footage list videos will be familiar with our next director, Japanese horror maestro Koji Shiraishi, whose film Noroi the Curse and whose series Senritsu Kaiki File Koasugi have both made it onto previous list videos on my channel. If you haven't seen either of those yet, man, you've got some homework to do, but for the rest of us, Koji's anthology film Uru Hora is a great piece of content despite your familiarity. As per usual for this director, this film is a mashup of J-horror tropes, zany special effects, and hair-raising urban legends. This time in an anthology format that covers everything from ghosts to psychics to even sea monsters. Or, sea buttholes. Uru Hora is presented as a series of lost, banned, and illegal videotapes, with each segment running less than 5 minutes and ending typically in brutal fashion. Most anthology movies like the VHS series will give you a basic plot, character, and motivation behind their segments. But Uru Hora skips all the bullshit and starts with each segment about 5 or so minutes from a paranormal tragedy. Like all of Koji's work, there's a perverse sense of humor behind this movie, even giving the viewer a safety warning within a few seconds of each death found in the film. Every time this warning popped up, I was like, oh boy, here we go. All in all, this is an eclectic, scary, sometimes goofy collection of horror shorts, all presented in a classic found footage or mockumentary style. A breezy watch, so long as you don't hit an exhaustion point after watching like 50 people die in a row. Another loony, scary, and definitively Japanese piece of content from one of the best found footage filmmakers to ever do it.
Number 88. The Alien Report.
Not since the pivotal 90s sci-fi film Fire in the Sky have I seen a more compelling and unsettling portrayal of alien abduction than what was achieved in the sci-fi horror film The Alien Report. This is an experimental found footage film chronicling a lifelong alien abductee as he rigs a secret camera to his hearing aid to record his extraterrestrial experiences. While this movie is more of a mood piece and a special effects showcase than an actual 3-act film, it manages to present some profoundly unnerving and insanely realistic vignettes that portray the body horrors, mental anguish, and twisted experiments being performed in these reported abductions. The alien footage here was created using allegedly real accounts of abduction that have been reported for decades, offering up what could possibly be the most accurate illustration of abduction accounts ever put to film. What this movie lacks in actual plot, it makes up for with style, incredibly slick homemade VFX, and an overall paranoid and horrifying vibe that will leave you praying that you'll never have to experience anything like this. Whether alien abduction is real or not is still, of course, up for debate, but there's no doubt in my mind that The Alien Report deserves the same cult following as movies like The Fourth Kind and Fire in the Sky as one of the most important visual representations of this reported phenomena ever put to screen. Now get out and support this film so the creators can produce the second and third parts of the series that they teased at the end of the movie.
Number 87. The Dark Tapes.
You do not command me. I am no simple flesh-eating ghoul.
I'm a big fan of horror anthologies in general, but when it comes to found footage anthologies like the VHS series, I'm always game for some short-form scares. The best thing about found footage anthologies is that you get to cut straight to the meat and potatoes of those little bites of horror.
Give me the meat, and give it to me raw.
Skipping the fat and unnecessary bloat of an average found footage movie to get right down to business. And The Dark Tapes is a great example of this formula. The Dark Tapes consists of 5 different stories that run the gamut of paranormal and even some science fiction elements, offering some solid variety while staying firmly in the horror space. And the framing device for this anthology is also a great story on its own, about a demon hunter who uses high-tech science to interact with other dimensional beings. And that's just the tip of the weird iceberg when it comes to surprises in store found within the Dark Tapes. This is obviously a far lower budget project than the VHS series, but what this collection of shorts lack in financial backing, they make up for with creative stories and some excellent homespun VFX. Some great twists, convincing performances, and genuinely well-written scripts make for a great anthology of found footage horror stories, for people with slightly smaller attention spans.
Number 86. SPECTER.
If you're into movies like The Outwaters, Skinamarink, and Yellow Brick Road, then boy, I've got a new movie for you to check out. And if you haven't seen those movies, then translation, this movie is extremely fucking weird. SPECTER is experimental, its color grading is wild, its plot is a bit nonsensical, but there is something undeniably gripping about this movie. It takes place in the bizarre fictional town of Middle Ground, in a world racked by fictional foreign wars and bizarre weather events. One such event, a tsunami, is about to hit Middle Ground at midnight, and we follow the wayward teenage youth of the town on the night of the storm. The vibe is apocalyptic and surreal as the residents of Middle Ground party like it's their last day on Earth by taking a new experimental drug that basically looks like alien fish eggs in a bottle, and none of this is ever explained. What follows might be a hallucination, or it may truly depict the end of our dimension, but either way, this is one of the weirdest, most eerie, and strangely compelling found footage films I've ever seen. This movie resembles the small town setup and large-scale destruction of the Bay, if the Bay chugged a bottle of purple Dimetap and swallowed a handful of benzos. I guarantee you that this will not be for everyone, but if you want a dreamy and unforgettably odd experience that lingered in my mind for quite some time after the credits rolled, then you've got to check out SPECTER.
Number 85. Occult.
If you're a fan of my found footage recommendation videos, then you won't be shocked to find yet another Koji Shiraishi film popping up in this list. From Noroi the Curse to Uru Hora to A Record of Sweet Murder to his series Senritsu Kaiki File Koasugi, Shiraiishi's projects keep making their way onto this channel because, in my mind, Koji is the most prolific found footage filmmaker, maybe in history. I mean, this dude is basically the Stephen King of found footage in terms of sheer volume of output. And 2009's Occult doesn't shake this trend, offering up a mysterious and grim story that begins with a series of freak murders in a Japanese park that then somehow morphs into a story about UFOs, parasitic leeches, mysterious gods, and all manner of cosmic fuckery. If you've never seen any of Koji's films, I wouldn't start here when there's movies like Noroi the Curse to explore, but for the Shiraishi faithful, this is another strange and oddly humorous tale of the paranormal with the director's signature style all over it. While Occult doesn't even get close to answering many of the questions that it poses, the mystery box element of this story kept me engaged and guessing until the final frame. Just make sure you stay to the very end for a truly Shiraishi-style post-credits scene, and try to enjoy the ride because this is one of the director's weirdest and most memorable works yet. Another puzzling, creative, and wildly unique entry into the filmography of potentially this genre's greatest artist.
Number 84. Malibu Horror Story.
Full disclosure to the found footage faithful. Malibu Horror Story is about 80% found footage and 20% non. But don't let that deter you, even though it's kind of annoying. I mean, the 20% regular footage could have easily been filmed as found footage, but I digress. This is a punchy horror film with zero fat around the edges, a bone-crunching descent into subterranean madness that follows the investigation of 4 missing teenagers in the hills of Malibu, California. The fate of this hard-partying group of friends leads to a statewide manhunt, and we follow a paranormal investigation team as they attempt to debunk the swirling rumors and potential poltergeists responsible for the missing teens. This movie has got a lot of the elements that I love in a good found footage movie, from a unique antagonist with interesting lore to some really solid production value as the investigators bring thermal cameras into the cave where the boys allegedly went missing. Great practical effects, brutal kills, and a couple of truly memorable jump scares stand out in this lean and thrilling horror movie. While it isn't going to reinvent the genre, Malibu Horror Story still had enough original ideas, spooky creature designs, and homages to horror movies I adore, like Neil Marshall's The Descent, to leave a lasting impression. So pack up that camping gear and your thermal vision camera and get ready to investigate the Malibu Horror Story.
Number 83. The ceremony is about to begin.
It's clear with The Ceremony is about to begin that director Sean Nichols Lynch had his heart in the right place, wringing some horrific and memorable moments out of a super low budget situation with the help of a couple really committed actors. In an effort to locate his missing ex-girlfriend, a filmmaker travels to a cult compound to interview Anubis, the head of an Egyptian-obsessed New Age spirit cult. The central character dynamic of the film between documentarian and subject reminded me a lot of the Creep series in its awkwardness and bubbling tension. And even though this movie seemed constrained by its minimal budget, it's still shot for the fences with an ancient Egyptian cult horror story packed with some wild turns. Clearly inspired by recent viral cult documentaries like Mother God, which, if you haven't watched that, holy shit, watch that. The Ceremony is about to begin is the Egyptian cult crossbreed documentary found footage movie you've been waiting for. Specific want, I know, but I felt like this was something I needed, so enjoy.
Number 82. The Deep House.
While I wish that this film had, ironically, more depth, the Deep House is still a wild, thalassophobic haunted house ride, and a brilliant crack at a fully underwater found footage horror spectacle. This movie comes from horror directing duo Julian Maury and Alexander Bustillo, who had previously directed my favorite slasher film of all time and one of the best modern horror movies ever made, 2007's Inside. Sadly, this film is more of an exercise in underwater jump scares and is nowhere near prolific or inspired as their earlier work. It seems like they just wanted to see if they could shoot a horror movie fully underwater, and in terms of that specific exercise, they understood the assignment. This movie is a creepy, high-concept horror experience with some terrible acting amidst a otherwise good to great ghost story. This movie kind of reminded me of an underwater version of something like 13 Ghosts or House on Haunted Hill 99, which is a style of horror I don't particularly mind rehashing to. Overall, this is a admittedly pretty bad movie that still manages to achieve some high watermarks and scares and technology while shooting fully underwater. Pretty badass idea taken to some really awesome extremes. The Deep House is for sure a dive worth taking.
Number 81, Donny's Bar Mitzvah.
5 shots of tequila all around. Let's put a roofie in every single one of them.
Fans of Tim and Eric and I Think You Should Leave will find a lot to love in Donny's Bar Mitzvah, one of the most raunchy and unhinged comedies from the past 10 years that seems to have fallen under most people's radars. And yeah, it looks like they've since changed the name of this movie to Donny's Party. Probably because being Jewish is about as popular as being OJ is in 2025. And yeah, speaking as a Jew here, by the way. Regardless, this is a hilarious and completely insane movie that is presented as an edited VHS tape from Donny's Bar Mitzvah. If you've ever had or ever been to a bar mitzvah, I mean, Donny's got a movie theme for his bar mitzvah. I had a movie theme for my bar mitzvah. This hit close to home again. There is lots to love and laugh at with this movie for those who are familiar with the bar mitzvah scene, but to those unfamiliar with the cliches of American Jewish bar mitzvah bashes, you'll still have plenty to crack up over here. Using VHS-style filmmaking and a handful of hilarious editing tricks that you'd see on any bar mitzvah tape from the 90s, Donny's Party or whatever takes an event that many of us are nostalgically familiar with and injects it with pitch black comedy and a handful of disgusting and insane gags. Within 10 minutes of starting this movie, you'll see and hear things you'd never expect in a film like this. And I gotta give props to the filmmakers here for going balls to the wall in every way imaginable.
I'm telling you, you can f my wife!
Gross, insane, and chock to the brim with unforgettably unhinged moments, Donny's Bar Mitzvah may be the perfect come down from the volley of unceasing horrors found on the rest of this list. Enjoy this batshit insane found footage comedy, and of course, Mazel Tov.
Number 80, The Curse of Professor Zardonicus.
This movie takes a page from Be My Cat and the Duplass brothers' Creep, as writer-director star Gabriel Thies sets out to make a documentary for a school project that morphs into a pitch-black character study and an actual nightmare. The subject of the documentary is Darren, a conspiratorial loner obsessed with a mysterious mythical campus legend named Professor Zardonicus, a mythical creature created from a lab accident who Darren claims is haunting the school. Quickly, it becomes clear that Darren is as unhinged and dangerous as his fictitious quest, leading Gabriel down a rabbit hole that threatens to tear his entire life apart. This is the perfect use of the found footage medium, creating waves of mounting tension solely born from excellent performances in the film, and the utter restraint shown in ratcheting up the stress of the film's subject in subtle and terrifying ways. The Curse of Professor Zardonicus is a home run, and hopefully we'll see another feature from Gabriel Thies in the near future.
Number 79, Ask.
Chris Vanderkay, welcome back to Put It Out There, the channel that teaches you to speak your truth into the world so that it becomes a truth of the world.
This movie is the definition of DIY. Director, writer, star, cameraman, probably producer, editor, Chris Vanderkay plays Chris Vanderkay. And while I actually laughed when I saw the trailer for this movie, and while I never planned to watch it and surely didn't see myself putting it on this list, I saw some praise for this movie, I decided to follow through, and holy shit, here we are. Anyway, let's do this. Let's do Ask. When I say DIY, I mean, look at my man running from the police in this movie. This is like a siren that you buy on Temu. And yes, it's fucking pronounced Temu. Look it up. I don't want to do this again. Vanderkay even wrote an entire horrifying plotline around getting dental veneer surgery in real life. And that is what we call turning lemons into lemonade, people. I found myself like in a trance watching this movie as this dumpy YouTuber guy who used to be homeless shells out business and life advice to his non-existent fan base.
Best of luck to you, though. You got a real talent telling people what they want to hear without really telling them anything at all.
Until a chance meeting with a mysterious life coach turns his entire world upside down. Somehow, this movie managed to do a lot with this zany and egotistical character. And as his life begins to supernaturally and mysteriously become altered, his character goes through some really hilarious changes and tribulations. Chris Vanderkay seems like a really imaginative and motivated filmmaker. And the movie he made here is a darkly funny, uncomfortable, and ultimately homemade found footage gem with a bizarre and somehow captivating lead performance. Great job, Chris. And yeah, this is also a great little movie to watch if you're a struggling YouTuber. Just a lot of things hit home. Not the getting veneers thing. My teeth are okay.
Number 78, The Wicksboro Incident.
They're all FBI agents and they're all aliens, I guess.
What?
Aliens? Scan them, they are all aliens.
Shit!
If you love classic found footage like the Blair Witch Project, or more similarly, the McPherson tape, then 2001's The Wicksboro Incident should really rev your engines. This is about as authentic as a bare-bones found footage film can be, with many commenters on this film on YouTube even questioning if it was a real documentary. There's even a moment of violence in this film that was so unshakable and convincingly shocking that apparently it's been confused for a real clip many times over the past 2 decades on the internet. The Wicksboro Incident might be one of the first films to tackle government conspiracies and UFOs in the found footage realm, and you can see inspiration taken from this film in nearly every UFO found footage movie after it in one way or another. I have no idea why this movie wasn't a bigger deal at the time, but if you're looking for a super paranoid, realistic, and nail-biting found footage movie that feels like Savage Land meets the Phoenix Incident, then you'll love this tightly wound thriller. Try looking it up on YouTube under the name The Wicksboro Feature, but regardless, this is a piece of found footage history that deserves more respect, and to be seen by more found footage maniacs like myself. Check it out.
Number 77, The Rocket List.
Sometimes, as a diehard fan of found footage, you gotta give it up to a movie that breaks the small-scale constraints of the genre to present a story full of massive and ambitious scope. The Rocket List is a great example of this, attempting to chronicle the apocalypse as a group of teens document their last days alive before a dwarf planet collides with the Earth. The Rocket List touches on the end of the world in similar ways to the series The Leftovers or the movie Melancholia did, as we get to feel the strange and bittersweet emotions of people who have bid farewell to life as we know it. What the filmmakers of the Rocket List often achieve in their film is due to truly ambitious, clearly homemade special effects, which were all made by the director, editor, and writer of this film. Calling to mind Gareth Edwards in his early career, especially with his film Monsters, in which he had made all the CGI himself on his laptop computer. Both of these movies place a lot of subtle details in the mise-en-scène using CGI that makes for a very convincing watch. Whether it's a tank off in the distance or even some smoke on the horizon, films like this that smartly use their special effects to immerse the viewer are often the most interesting and realistic. There are plenty of large-budget moments in the Rocket List, some that even reminded me of Cloverfield at their best. And overall, it's a really involving and emotional experience, while also clearly suffering from a low budget and inexperienced actors. And I do mean inexperienced because sadly these aren't the most involved or convincing performances. I mean, these seem like kids in high school, and they're actually weirdly juvenile at times, but still. Using bare-bones elements and barely any cash is basically a found footage staple, so circumventing those issues as well as this movie did to tell such a large-scale piece of storytelling is absolutely worth the praise. Not a horror movie, but definitely an experience that will fill you with a certain kind of bittersweet dread. The Rocket List is a unique found footage movie with some great world building and set pieces, although at times it definitely felt like it bit off more than it could chew. Still, add this to your end of the world bucket list regardless.
Number 76, The Belle Witch Haunting.
Next up on this list is The Belle Witch Haunting, which sounds pretty generic and kinda is, but was an absolute blast. This was just a really classic, well-made, supernatural found footage movie that kind of felt like Paranormal Activity on steroids. Great scares that employed really creative, great homespun VFX, and a cast down and willing to get absolutely nuts with it. I really enjoyed this movie's take on the Paranormal Activity haunted house genre, and while it didn't add a single goddamn thing to that formula, it executed it with utter panache. Most bad found footage movies would have pulled half the tricks and spooks in this one, and while it was like, I don't know why, bizarrely horny in general about any woman on screen at any time.
You wore pants today?
Hey everyone, welcome to Swimsuit Edition.
I don't know what they were doing here. It was still a pretty great found footage movie that had me creeped out significantly in my basement while watching it. Just one of those found footage movies that feels like it was really made by someone who loves horror in general, and that passion definitely shows.
That's right, I'm gonna be the next Spielberg. He's gonna be Lucas. Why am I Lucas? Because you suck.
A lot of memorable and horrifying stuff in this one. Definitely a great watch.
Number 75, The Triangle.
Do you think they're alive?
I think my definition of alive has changed.
A mysterious postcard from a distant friend kicks off the action in 2016's The Triangle, leading 4 filmmakers deep into the Montana Badlands to investigate a commune where their buddy has been living for several months. What this movie lacks in plot is easily made up for with stunning cinematography, a high production setting, and a central mystery that leaves a lot to the imagination. In a good way. The commune itself is populated with extremely realistic characters, and overall, this movie captures a level of immersion and realism that most found footage films struggle to achieve. During its fascinating setup, I'd easily believe you if you told me this is a real-life operating commune full of real people, and not a fictional film at all. Creatively using multiple cameras and multiple perspectives playing simultaneously, something I've really never seen in another found footage movie that I can think of, The Triangle eventually ramps up the tension so effectively that when shit finally hits the fan in this one, I felt my throat clenching for like a full hour. While sadly there isn't much of a resolution to this film, it leaves a handful of plot threads kind of just up in the air. The experience is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I was fully entrenched in the breakdown of this hippie commune, and it kind of felt like the Firefest documentary mixed with the Blair Witch Project. For a film that is documentary-level realistic while still managing to create some fascinating supernatural lore, it's time to join up with the cult and fall into The Triangle.
Number 74, Cold Ground.
As you may have been able to tell from all my other found footage videos so far on this channel, extra points will always be awarded to period piece found footage movies. There's just something so fascinating about adding in an extra layer of authenticity by using old-looking footage and period-accurate costumes, elevating a typical Lost in the Woods found footage movie into something far more memorable. Cold Ground is an excellent example of this because while the film is full of uneventful stretches, shaky cam, and rather obvious plotting, there's still something so unnerving and realistic about this one. If you need some more info on the plot, Cold Ground follows 2 young journalists as they travel to the French-Swiss border to investigate a strange case of cattle mutilations. This leads to a yarn about secret government experimentation gone wrong, and then eventually to monsters running amok as our team reaches the interior of the mysterious forest that they'll eventually get hopelessly lost in. There are some truly impressive panoramic shots of the landscape that they get lost in this movie. I mean, I'd love to know how they filmed this one and where. And the whole thing feels like we're getting a really genuine found footage take on a movie like Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers, which this movie reminded me of a lot. For a great period piece monster movie, Cold Ground is a chilly, hypothermic ride into the unknown.
Number 73, Project MKHEXE.
MKHEXE is a blender full of Lovecraftian dread, creepypasta lore, and a whole heaping pile of paranoia that combines into a mostly agreeable mixture. This is one of the beefiest found footage movies out there, stuffing its nearly 2-hour runtime full to the brim with exposition so dense and well illustrated that it almost becomes nauseating in its first hour. A young man grieving the sudden loss of his brother leads to an investigation and subsequent documentary about a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories that his brother was obsessed with, known as Project MKHEXE. The project is a Frankenstein monster of MK-Ultra conspiracy theories, red-pilled chronically online delusions, and finally a web of cult-like acolytes who have experienced the demonic power of the MKHEXE project firsthand. This is one of those Russian doll-style found footage movies like Butterfly Kisses, where we're seeing movies inside of movies, found footages inside of found footages, and different filmed perspectives from people across the world who've tampered with the power and dark mysteries held by the elusive project. Not everything works here, and honestly this movie becomes fairly overwhelming at times with how many accounts are being told and how many theories are being floated at a given moment, but any fan of found footage horror is going to find a handful of threads that they will find satisfaction in here. Almost bordering on being an anthology film with how many pieces there are to this puzzle, MKHEXE is a dense and sometimes quite frightening pastiche of horrific stories that surround the mysterious project. Again, this movie was a big swing, and not everything landed, but it packed enough of a punch and introduced enough new ideas that made it a ride well worth taking. Now, turn off the lights and get ready to get MKHEXed, or Stuckmanized.
Number 72, Last Radio Call.
There are honestly so many haunted asylum found footage movies, most of which are terrible, but if you want one that is actually well made and rather unique, look no further than The Last Radio Call. Sarah is the subject of a documentary on the disappearance of her husband David, a police officer who is investigating an abandoned mental hospital before he suddenly vanished. We follow Sarah as the mysteries around the Yorktown Memorial Hospital only seem to get stranger and darker as she digs deeper. This movie hits all the right notes for a simple found footage horror film, from multiple sources of footage like body cams and security tapes, to some interesting and ominous lore surrounding whatever may be haunting the halls of the hospital itself. This is another selection on the list that won't reinvent the genre or change your life, but it's a solidly plotted and efficiently scary movie that has no fat on the bone and even has some pretty shocking moments and reveals. I don't always love jump scares, but this movie had a handful of good ones that reminded me of moments from movies like Lake Mungo, to even a moment that reminded me of found footage legend Koji Shirayoshi's films. Anyway, for a breezy and scary hour and a half of haunted asylum goodness, check out The Last Radio Call now.
Number 71, Name the Demon.
The demonic possession found footage subgenre is more flooded than the Titanic at this point, and for what it's worth, on my last list video I recommended the possession movie Godforsaken, and even that was better than this one. But Jesus Christ, if you still absolutely need to see another possession movie in this lifetime, check out Name the Demon. The acting might be a little amateurish, and the film doesn't pack many or real surprises, but what this movie lacked in artistry, it more than made up for with gore, great kills, and excellent homemade practical effects. This movie pulled off a handful of effective scares, and the possessed woman's makeup and prosthetics were well done and downright scary. Oh, and this movie had a fun and unique little detail where the battery display of the camera actually went down as the movie went on in real time for the entire duration of the film. And yeah, they didn't even draw attention to it at all. Nobody was like, oh, we only have 5% left, hurry up. None of that happened. And, you know, that's kind of a nice, subtle, and effective use of the genre. Name the Demon might not be the best, or even the 5th best demonic possession found footage movie, but its focus on character depth and its eventual torrents of blood made it an exorcism worth attending.
Number 70, The Pyramid.
The Pyramid marries so many guilty pleasures that I fall prey to that it's no wonder I love this movie. Its basic premise is kind of a what-if found footage to the best parts of The Mummy. You know, where they're down in the trenches of Hymenoptera just getting stalked and spooked to no end. That's this whole movie, but in found footage. The acting is passable, the effects are pretty damn high grade for the genre, and once again, this is a rare instance where a found footage movie was actually released into theaters. Of course, critics malign this one, they seem to always do that with found footage, but if you are a diehard of the genre, this is actually one of its most high production entries. Go in with a couple of beers and enjoy this occasionally nightmarish ride through the Egyptian underworld.
Number 69, Shopping Tour.
Shopping Tour is a clever and nail-biting rumination on Russian economic class disparity, set amongst a strongly characterized and fraught relationship between a mother and a son. Realistic, low-budget, but truly frightening, Shopping Tour is an energetic and memorable story about a mother and son who cross into Finland on an overcrowded bus to go on a discount shopping trip, only to be plunged into a situation of trauma-inducing horror. I don't want to ruin the central conceit of this great little film, but there are shades of Hostel and Dawn of the Dead in this movie in all the best ways. Just a classic, frighteningly realistic found footage movie that's been buried in obscurity up until now. Check this one out for free on Tubi before the shopping spree is over.
Number 68, the Dyatlov Pass Incident.
A film from director Renny Harlin. Yes, that Renny Harlin of Die Hard 2, Deep Blue Sea, and Cliffhanger fame. Returning to a thriller once again set in a snowy mountainscape. This movie has a bit of clout behind it and therefore had a bit of a budget to play with as a documentary crew travels to remote Russia to debunk the Dyatlov Pass incident, where a group of mountaineers died under suspicious circumstances in the Russian wilderness. Like the Chernobyl report, this film plays with real-life Russian blunders to inform its mystery story. And if you're able to swallow the absolutely nauseating acting in this one, you'll find a solid X-Files-esque mystery with some solid effects, good production value, and a pretty wild and twisted ending. This one is for sure worth a watch, especially if you want to see what a legendary director like this could bring to a smaller format genre like found footage.
Number 67, Hostile Dimensions.
So yeah, I'm proud to prop up 2024's Hostile Dimensions, a genre-bending, mind-bending found footage movie that could stand shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the better sci-fi movies from the past few years. Hostile Dimensions follows a young female filmmaker desperate for another hit after her last film was met with less than stellar reviews. It is this desperation that leads her to investigating a strange case of a missing teen that involves a mysterious door in a warehouse that seemingly leads to nowhere. The filmmaker and her partner bring the door back to their apartment to investigate, and that's when all hell and all dimensions break loose. Built on the simplistic sleight of hand idea that every time the door opens, it opens into a new dimension, the filmmakers of Hostile Dimensions take full advantage of this gimmick and offer up a handful of different, terrifying, unknowable worlds on a cheap budget with homespun effects. This multiverse of madness has tons of interesting ideas, creative execution, and the best trait of any good found footage movie: the ability to make a movie that cost less than $1 million feel like it's a $200 million sci-fi blockbuster. Make sure you check out this brainy, witty, bizarre found footage epic before it becomes forgotten like the rest of these gems.
Number 66, The Dinosaur Project.
If you haven't been able to tell so far on this list, I like to reward movies in this genre when their ambition greatly outpaces their budget. In the end, it's this ability to make smaller scale films seem so grand in their scope that can make found footage movies truly memorable. In terms of ambition, look no further than The Dinosaur Project, a straight-to-DVD movie that was instantly lost in the sands of time, but absolutely deserves a seat at the table of great found footage experiences. If you haven't already gathered by now, this is basically Jurassic Park, given the found footage treatment. Despite the honestly atrocious acting in this one, the Dinosaur Project is a worthy homage to famous dinosaur movies and found footage movies alike, blending the strengths of both to come up with some fantastically creative camera gags and reveals using modern filming technology in a primal world.
Number 65, 388 Arletta Avenue.
Starring everybody's favorite John Connor. Wait, hold on, that's not him. Starring everybody's favorite John Connor.
The fuck are you doing?
No, wait, that's not him either.
Are you professional or not?
No, not him. Definitely not that guy. There he is. Anyway, starring Nick Stahl and Casper himself, Devon Sawa, 388 Arletta Avenue is yet another home invasion / spy camera found footage film that follows a very unlucky couple as they are methodically stalked and mentally tortured by a mysterious figure who has their cars, house, and even their workplaces lined with secret spy cameras. Much like the fantastic film Hangman from my last list, this is a movie that will make you feel like you're being invaded, stalked, and monitored in your own home, as Billy and his wife Amy slowly watch their world and sanity unravel during a tirade of mysterious events that seem to follow them everywhere. A truly tense, solidly budgeted thriller with some vicious plot turns. 388 Arletta Avenue is a particularly memorable and overall haunting chronicle of a couple under the vice grip of a murderous intruder. You'll be checking your basement, attic, and even the back seat of your car after this one, as 388 Arletta Ave leaves a dark and uneasy impression on the human psyche. Check this one out now.
Number 64, The Oldest View.
It's an AMC. It's a fucking AMC.
Fans of creepypastas, internet lore, and liminal spaces are eating good these days on the internet. Led by visionary creators like Kane Pixels, who invented the infamous Backroom series. Pixels is leading the found footage revolution on the web with authentic, terrifying, and utterly mysterious pieces of content. And to great success, as he is now developing a Backrooms movie adaptation with A24. In the meantime, Kane has created and published the recent series The Oldest View to his YouTube channel, and it's cultivated another massive fan base for him that is busy breaking down the clues, symbols, and hints in his work in an effort to get to the bottom of yet another vague internet mystery series. I've tried to keep my found footage videos and lists relegated to theatrical or DTV streaming films. But since the found footage creepypasta community is so vocal and is ever growing, I wanted to touch on The Oldest View here since it seems to be setting the internet and the found footage community on fire. Granted, if you need your found footage movies to be plot heavy, full of rich characters, and structured like a regular movie, The Oldest View may seem like a confusing or pointless slog to you. It's a series of ambiguous shorts shot by a fictional narrator named Wyatt, who discovers a mysterious hole in the ground while exploring private property, which then leads to a horrifying and utterly mysterious set of increasingly bizarre discoveries. This series, which culminates in a near movie-length third chapter, chronicles Wyatt's descent into the mysterious hole, which leads to miles of underground stairs, and eventually to an abandoned mall that is full of unanswered and bizarre questions and discoveries. I don't want to spoil much for you here, but this is an increasingly paranoid, realistic, and nerve-jangling experience that is unlike mostly anything you'll see in the found footage world or beyond. Even more incredibly, I think that this whole series may have been created using CGI in the program Blender, but it's hard for me to discern what is real and what's fake in this incredible series of shorts. The work is seriously that good, and it's basically photo-real. This is a true waking nightmare of a scenario, using nostalgic memories of shopping malls and the crushing weight of the unknown to craft a truly nail-biting experience. Like I said, people are busy breaking down The Oldest View's many clues and mysteries. And it's almost as fun watching people on YouTube breaking down the meaning behind the film as it is watching the series itself. Make sure you find a link for all the shorts combined into a feature-length runtime so you can have all the clues and pieces of the puzzle in one place. But just as A24 probably realized about Kane Pixels, we're dealing with one of the most unique,
fresh, inventive voices in the medium right now who seems to have his finger on the pulse of the internet mystery community as well as the found footage fan clubs. The Oldest View is a downright creepy, unknowable, and dread-soaked experience that surely isn't the same kind of content as a normal movie, but for some, it seems to be far scarier than anything you'd find streaming on Tubi. Not for everyone, but the masterfully vague and goosebump-raising nature of The Oldest View makes it an undeniably scary and mysterious found footage gem.
Number 63, The Devil's Doorway.
God Almighty!
If you've watched my other list videos, then you'll know that some of my favorite found footage movies are period pieces. The Devil's Doorway is no exception to the rule, taking place in Ireland in 1960 with film stock made to mimic old 16mm cameras. This is a convincingly authentic little horror movie, and while it doesn't reinvent the wheel, it has some maturely executed scares and some solid lead performances from its committed cast. The film's setting comes from a creepy part of Irish history, taking place at a Magdalen laundry, a sort of halfway house/monastery that were known for their heinous and infamous practices and treatments towards the wayward women inside. When bloody tears are witnessed falling from the statue of Mary, two priests are dispatched to a laundry that is chocked to the brim with dark secrets and startling horrors. A little bit of The Exorcist, a little bit of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and you've got a simple but well-executed religious horror movie with an impressively detailed period setting. The Devil's Doorway is another great entry into the found footage religious possession subgenre, and should be commended for using a unique time period and setting to great effect.
Number 62, The Collingswood Incident.
Rebecca, the video button.
Duh. Much better.
Admittedly, the Collingswood story isn't a movie that I would immediately recommend to somebody just getting into the genre, since it's quite dated and very bare bones. But if you want to see a film that was doing what movies like 2020's Host or the Missing franchise do so well by capturing an entire computer screen for the length of the movie, then this is a fun little project for you to get your nostalgic hooks into. Filmed completely with ancient webcam technology from the early 2000s, the Collingswood story creates a tense, moody, and atmospheric horror story with about as much money as a Happy Meal costs at McDonald's in 2024. Still, with such little resources and barely any script to speak of, this movie manages to pull off a really involving yarn about a haunted house with some great mythology and some truly scary moments. This is a fairly hypnotic and realistic little movie, with two convincing central performances and some actually unnerving twists in its narrative. Not the best found footage movie by any means, but when you're reviewing forgotten gems, this movie deserves a seat at the digital webcam table. Despite some silly, spooky footage inserts and some less than optimal audio, the Collingswood story is still a fantastic little horror tale that is not only free on YouTube, but is easy to digest and enjoy. Apparently, the actors in this movie had to film their scenes on separate days, which I found really compelling because it's quite convincing that these were all real webcam conversations between two people. Solid acting, solid scares, all on a threadbare budget, the Collingswood story is a webcam call worth accepting.
Number 61, The Mirror.
Hello, I'm Steve, and this is our application for the $1 million Paranormal Challenge.
There are few found footage movies that have unnerved me the way that The Mirror managed to, even despite its low budget and simple premise. Much like Invited earlier on this list, The Mirror is chock full of shocking violence and suffocating dread that left me palpitating and anxious in a way that only the best horror achieves. Mike Flanagan's film Oculus, also about a haunted mirror, is such a great execution of this premise that I thought this movie was doomed to be outpaced before it even began. But here we are. We now have a second, truly excellent, unsettling horror movie about a paranormal piece of glass. In an attempt to win $1 million contest seeking proof of the paranormal, three flatmates order a haunted mirror online and end up getting exactly what they asked for. No use in spoiling this any further, but this movie was proof positive that a simple premise executed by talented filmmakers can override any budget and still burrow deep under your skin. Maybe I'm just getting soft in my old age, but to me, The Mirror was one of the most actually tense and terrifying movies I've seen for any of these lists. If you want to see a truly scary found footage movie, then all you need to do is look in the mirror.
Number 60, Lunopolis.
Lunopolis is a 2010 film that employs cosmic horror and big ideas into the sparsely budgeted found footage genre. Kind of the father of cosmic conspiracy films that would later find success with directors like Moorhead and Benson, whose recent cosmic conspiracy film Something in the Dirt absolutely riveted me. So take that as a tangential recommendation, but Lunopolis was the first film to use such a low-tech canvas to paint such a large-scale tale of lunacy. The film follows two documentary filmmakers who discover a mysterious device, unraveling a conspiracy involving the moon, time travel, and a powerful organization who will stop at nothing to protect these secrets at all costs.
Number 59, Godforsaken.
Holy hell. Godforsaken is a fairly large-scale slice of religious mayhem that follows a documentary crew as they investigate alleged reports of a local girl who has seemingly come back from the dead. Once the town finds out that she hath risen, they begin to flock to her home to see if she can perform miracles. And that is when things go absolutely tits up immediately. Unlike mostly every found footage movie out there, Godforsaken actually begins with a truly startling set piece in the first 5 minutes. A rarity considering how slowly these movies tend to kick off their plot. While this is obviously operating on a low budget, Godforsaken still packs a gaggle of brutal kills, shocking moments, and crazy reveals in its brief runtime. This was a uniquely disturbing found footage experience that drops you into a quaint snowy town as it careens into a hellish bloodbath. Love the scale of the setting here, with more extras and more mayhem than you'd typically find in a small-scale horror film like this. Fans of demonic possession and Dawn of the Dead-esque neighborhood meltdowns will feel at home in this suburban religious horror spectacle. A movie that starts with a bloody bang and doesn't let up until its final frame.
Number 58, What Happened to Dorothy Belle?
She claimed that they told her to do things, bad things.
Despite the generic-sounding name and even more generic-looking poster, What Happened to Dorothy Belle is a uniquely eerie found footage movie that will leave you disturbingly on edge. Unlike a large majority of found footage films, Dorothy Belle takes its subject deathly seriously. This isn't a movie of goofy frat bro characters and sex-crazed campers. Instead, What Happened to Dorothy is an actually elevated piece of horror storytelling that explores the topics of familial mental illness, grief, and hereditary trauma through the lens of a found footage film. Ozzy is a college student who is haunted by her morbid past, as she attempts to understand why her grandmother tried to kill her when she was just a little girl. That incident left her scarred, both mentally and emotionally, and the mystery of her grandmother's insanity is dredged up once again when Ozzy discovers a mysterious book at her college library that was once found in her grandmother's possession. With some light lore but some major scares, Dorothy Belle is an actually frightening film that uses the found footage format to pull off some utterly shocking moments throughout its brief runtime. For a believable horror film full of committed actors and some downright hair-raising scares, you want to investigate this ominous, nostalgic, and terrifying little slice of found footage familial horror.
Number 57, The Decedent.
Anyone inside, please make yourself known.
From director Andrew Bowser, aka Onyx the Fortuitous, if that rings a bell.
I don't know. Arby's is pretty cool.
Comes one of the most shockingly brutal and surprisingly grim found footage movies in recent memory. The Decedent is a morose tale of supernatural possession set at a family-owned funeral home, where a young mortuary assistant named Belle is working after hours on a cadaver that seems to be hiding some powerful and horrifying secrets. This movie's footage itself is comprised of newly installed security cams from the funeral home, and a mix of different body cams to capture a night of brutality that unfolds once the work on the corpse begins. Some downright shocking plot subversions make for a truly fascinating lead character performance in this movie, as the Decedent takes some truly insane turns early on that only spiral out further into madness as the third act begins to brew. A well-acted, convincing, one-location found footage film that checks all the boxes for a pretty gnarly horror experience. The Decedent is a brutal and well-made movie built on some crazily morbid lore, and should be instantly considered in the upper pantheon of great recent found footage horror releases that fans of the genre should flock to immediately. So go ahead and grab your embalming fluid and your scalpel, because this is going to be an autopsy that you won't soon forget.
Number 56, Black Daruma.
My first words were...
Sometimes a simple, high-concept approach can anchor an entire found footage movie and elevate it above the fray. And Black Daruma does just that with its incredibly unique approach. Ryan, a jobless and desperate husband who feels the financial pressure from his wife and lack of work closing in on him, purchases a Japanese luck doll, also known as a Black Daruma, which he seemingly puts all of his faith and future into. It becomes a real monkey's paw situation from there, of course, but what makes this movie such a blast to watch is that the entire thing is shot from the perspective of the doll's eyes itself. We see Ryan's descent into desperation and madness play out through the eyes of the doll that may or may not be supernaturally controlling him. Black Daruma is funny at times and extremely tense at others, but overall it's an experience like nothing you've ever seen before, mostly due to its unique point of view. Clever plot construction and mythical rules to the Daruma ensures that the doll stays close to Ryan for the entire film, uncomfortably so, cleverly chronicling his gradual unwinding into insanity. I really enjoyed this original, zany, and low-budget horror film, which took great advantage of the found footage format in new and interesting ways.
Number 55, Saiko, The Large Family.
In my first found footage video, I included the movie The Outwaters. Not because I actually loved or even liked it, but because it's just such a frustrating enigma that asks more from its audience than the typical found footage story. Banned from broadcast, Saiko the Large Family is one such abstract found footage experiment. I mean, you may walk away from this one like most people walked away from Beau is Afraid. Mad, upset, frustrated, disgusted, and ready for a nap or a bath or something that has a plot that makes any kind of sense. I can confidently say that despite my initial lukewarm reaction to this one, Saiko the Large Family, over the past few weeks and in the days following watching it, has really seeped into my brain in disturbing ways. This is ostensibly a wholesome documentary about a large family in Japan, something that's seemingly rare as the country grapples with declining birth rates. This faux documentary resembles the run-of-the-mill BBC exposé, introducing us to the large family in a straightforward yet foreign perspective, as the Canadian host of the show, Veronica Addison, slowly illustrates not only the family, but the Japanese cultural norms exhibited in several members of the family as well. Addison herself is stilted and frankly weird in her line delivery and approach, giving off this overall alien, borderline comedic vibe that only increases the general weirdness of the documentary itself. But beneath this simple illustration of family life in Japan, there is something absolutely sinister, bizarre, and unexplained happening in the background. Much like Hereditary, this is a portrait of a broken family where the clues to their problems are scattered throughout the backgrounds, artifacts, and various sections of the house that might only begin to truly reveal themselves after a second viewing. You won't get much in the way of answers here, but the sole fact that there's so many disturbing mysteries brewing beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic family will definitely set your imagination on fire, while challenging you to keep searching for clues throughout the film, and maybe even after. And you'll find them if you have a keen eye, because there are figures lurking, weapons pointing out, and horrific truths to what is happening in the family scattered throughout the film like a trail of breadcrumbs that kind of leads to nowhere.
This movie will not be for everyone, but for those of us who have seen everything that the genre has to offer, to those of us who watch horror movies like sleuths instead of simple viewers, Saiko provides a mystery box that I am not only deeply disturbed by, but one that I'm still unpacking a week after watching the film. A disturbing challenge to the found footage world, Saiko is a large family worth your attention, and suspicion as well.
Number 54, Gonijam, Haunted Asylum.
Haunted Asylum is a movie that has spent the better part of a decade rotting away on my various hard drives and queues. And it wasn't until I made my last found footage where people were really pushing me in the comments to check this one out. And yeah, I'm glad that I did. I've tried to unsuccessfully watch this one a few times and just kept bailing, truth be told. I'm not really into the whole paranormal mental asylum trope after so many years of found footage films that followed this narrative. But somehow, Haunted Asylum still gripped me by the end of its brief runtime. This is as bare bones and classic of a paranormal investigation yarn as we've seen time and time again, but this film actually employs a bevy of great effects moments, effective scares, and chilling moments to raise it above the unmemorable. This isn't top-tier cinema, okay, but it's a brisk little horror film that hits hard, and has something that I always enjoy, which is a really great, chaotic final third. Not much out of the ordinary here, but Gonijam is the kind of rock-solid found footage experience that goes to show how engrossing the genre can be when handled with firm direction and mounting tension. A little more high budget than a lot of the offerings I've explored, Gonijam deserves a seat next to Grave Encounters and some of the Wreck sequels, as a chilling and occasionally shocking found footage movie that gracefully hits all the marks that make up the best of the genre.
Number 53, Embedded.
My issue with most found footage Bigfoot movies, and the reason that they haven't shown up in any of my videos thus far, boils down to two main issues that I have with the subgenre. One, it's usually just a movie about an annoying couple camping in the woods in a little tent, and you just see, like, oh, something scratching the outside of the tent, and oh, our fire got put out last night. Two, you never see the goddamn Bigfoot. Embedded from 2012 seems to gleefully rectify both of these issues, with tons of rattling Bigfoot horror action throughout, and a plot that involves a whole town rallying together to hunt the beast. The story is filmed by a reporter and his cameraman who had formerly been embedded in a platoon covering the war in Iraq. Now they find themselves at ground zero of a Sasquatch attack that has the whole town of Hats Creek taking to the woods to find their missing kin. The guys who made this clearly love the vibe of movies like First Blood and, of course, Aliens, with a gruff militia of hardasses going after Bigfoot armed to the teeth. This isn't so much a scary movie as it is an enjoyable popcorn found footage flick, with a slightly comedic tone and a pretty solid budget. The creature costume might not be the best thing that I've ever seen, but the sound effects are top notch and the creature's speed and ferocity makes up for kind of the ape suit we got going on. All in all, a really fun Bigfoot movie, and not just a movie where a terrified couple shines a flashlight inside of a tent for an hour and a half. Embedded is a fun night at the movies, with Bigfoot, with the big guy.
Number 52, The Phoenix Incident.
Unlike most found footage movies that have to hold their more explosive elements until the final act, The Phoenix Incident kicks off midway into an alien invasion, a narrative about missing men in the desert, and rumblings of government conspiracy before the title card even drops. And once again, ambition seems to win out because the Phoenix experiment plays like Aliens by way of the Blair Witch Project. Like Devil's Pass, The Phoenix Incident uses a real-life event, the Phoenix Lights, to kick off the plot of a more complex horror narrative. Tons of mixed media, authentic-looking military footage of the UFOs and the aliens themselves, and a couple of great set pieces highlight a pulse-pounding alien conspiracy action film that feels like an homage to everything from Starship Troopers to Independence Day. Truthfully, with the amount of UAP disclosure going on in the news right now, this footage has never really felt more eerie or real. One of the more unique entries on this list.
Number 51. Capture, kill, release.
You can't do this with a cat. How are you going to do it with a person?
Baby.
The kitty's saying goodbye.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
I'll admit it, I'm not the gorehound that I used to be. I get pretty queasy, and movies like Capture, Kill, Release aren't typically my cup of horror tea. For example, my friend Chase wanted me to watch this movie Long Pigs for this project, and I could not make it through the first 10 minutes of this movie. It was so disgusting. But still, because of this movie's fascinating character dynamics, Capture, Kill, Release managed to cling to me for weeks after watching it. A couple engaged in an escalating game of murderous chicken decide to finally claim their first victim together. And a majority of the film revolves around watching these two plan, map out, and eventually pull the trigger on a scheme to cruelly end another person's life. Along the way, the movie examines a deteriorating relationship dynamic between the couple as things begin to escalate from a kinky fantasy to a blood-red reality. This is a pretty mean-spirited, super gory film that evokes everything from American Psycho to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. But if you can stomach it, Capture, Kill, Release is a brutal character study that I found as memorable as it is revolting.
Tell me what you did.
What we did?
Number 50. Frogman.
What the fuck is this?
Frogman is a classic found footage creature feature, reminiscent of everything from H.P. Lovecraft's Dagon to the weirder segments from the VHS franchise. A disgraced filmmaker returns to a remote town where he once filmed the alleged Frogman creature as a kid in 1999, in an effort to prove as an adult that the creature still exists. Said proof will also clear his name after decades of public ridicule. He even brings the original camera that he filmed the creature with as a kid, which gives the whole film this authentic and nostalgic VHS vibe, as he records with a classic 90s camcorder. What plays out ping-pongs from funny to ultimately terrifying, covering the comedic and dramatic gamut that the best found footage movies strike an effective balance with. This isn't the most intellectual or profound found footage movie, but if you're looking for a creature feature with some great characters and solidly earned chuckles, Frogman is a unique and memorable selection. Also, holy hell, the final 15 minutes of this movie were worth the wait.
Ribbit. Number 49. Found footage, the making of the Patterson Project.
Oh, so I am recording.
Oh yeah, man, you're filming the whole thing.
Oh, so you're gonna be cutting this into the movie?
This is the movie, man.
I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Yeah, so am I.
Despite its seemingly generic name, found footage, the making of the Patterson Project, is an incredible gift to fans of found footage horror and one of the best genre-bending mashups I've seen when researching for one of these lists. This is a movie that balances humor and horror on a knife's edge, beginning as a light parody that follows a clueless film crew as they attempt to shoot a found footage horror movie about Bigfoot, and ending with torrents of blood and horror that actually unsettled me by the time the credits rolled. I found this movie somewhat similar to They're Watching, another great movie that landed on one of my lists, and like that film, the making of the Patterson Project is a meta mockumentary at heart, with some truly impressive VFX and scares that bleed out of a truly bananas third act. Not only was this movie quite hilarious and horrifying, but it also managed to sneak in some great character work that made me feel actually invested in the fate of the filmmakers as well. A solid dramedy, a cracking mockumentary, and then eventually a blood-soaked splatterfest, found footage, the making of the Patterson Project, is a guaranteed win for movie night, and a new cult classic in the found footage horror world. Now grab your camera and your popcorn and get ready to go behind the scenes of the Patterson Project.
Number 48. Delivery, the Beast Within.
Every child is a blessing, especially when it's your first.
I'll be honest, it's tough for me to be objective about Delivery, the Beast Within. And while my job is best while operating with full objectivity, I simply couldn't with this one. Delivery is a movie about a young couple expecting their first child. The mother is named Rachel, her mother is named Barbara, and they are expecting a baby boy just as they're planning to move to a new house with their shared big brown dog. Whereas in my own real life, I am also married to a girl named Rachel, who is also pregnant with a baby boy, who also has a mother named Barbara, and we are also planning on moving to a new house with our shared brown dog. So besides the frankly supernatural level of connections I have with this movie, it also happens to be an outright terrifying experience on its own. Probably still without it feeling like it was torn directly from my actual life. This is a really nerve-wracking, horribly sad, and ultimately shocking found footage movie that feels a bit like Rosemary's Baby mixed with Paranormal Activity. Solid performances and convincing characters make this a tough and terrifying watch. And while the eerie connections to my life definitely push this one further up the list, the end of this movie cemented its place on the countdown. Absolutely unforgettable final moments in this one, and of course, trigger warning for expectant mothers for the entire film. Thankfully, before you ask, I did not make my wife Rachel watch this movie with me, and just telling her about it seemed to get me in enough trouble as it is. As it stands, Delivery: The Beast Within is a truly shocking, simple, but horrific ride through 9 unforgettable months. Watch this one as soon as possible before the due date finally arrives.
Number 47, Don't Peek.
A month ago, I covered the found footage film Looky Loo, a bare-bones POV found footage horror movie that followed a stalker as he executed his creepy crimes. Sadly, that movie did nothing for me because it offered no new twists, perspectives, or ideas to the genre, sticking solely to footage of a stalker looking into people's windows for no good reason other than he's a stalker. Thankfully, I managed to check out the new 2025 found footage film Don't Peek for this list, which is proof positive that with some character motivation, a strong script, and some actually interesting mythology for the killer, you can make a good found footage stalker movie that packs an emotional and visceral punch. Don't Peek follows the Winters, a married couple in California who are struggling to launch their YouTube channel until they discover a box of mysterious VHS tapes in their new house. These tapes prove to be an unsweet record of brutal murder as the Winters become entangled with the mysterious killer in a dangerous game that is great for their YouTube channel, but not so great for not being murdered. Some of the scenes from this movie reminded me of the found footage moments from Scott Derrickson's horror classic Sinister, and while this movie isn't nearly as scary as that one, you'll find yourself consistently unnerved by the killer's spine-tingling videotapes, as well as the increasingly paranoid and frightening plot developments that play out after the Winters begin their investigation. A tightly scripted, well-acted, and ultimately chilling found footage experience that will wash away the sins of serial looky-loo stalker found footage movies that feel like they don't go anywhere. Don't Peek is as creepy as it is satisfying.
Number 46, Howard's Mill.
Like the best found footage mockumentaries, Howard's Mill is a film like Lake Mungo or Savage Land that disguises its minimal budget with committed actors, a detailed and convincing setting, and a handful of reveals that will leave your head spinning until the credits roll. What I love about movies like this are their ability to mimic real-life true crime docs. But whereas those, of course, have to obey the rules of common sense and actual non-fiction reality, a good found footage mockumentary begins with a story we all seemingly recognize from our world, and then expands on it in some really mind-bending ways. While your imagination can run to the craziest places while first experiencing the setup of a good true crime doc, mockumentaries like this can actually venture to those unreal places and provide an otherworldly answer that feels as convincing as the craziest mysteries from actual docs. Howard's Mill begins with a simple missing persons case and then evolves into a wild foray into cosmic horror that is chock full of impossible twists and mysterious dread. While they could have taken the concept of this movie even further, the fact that they kept things pretty restrained adds to the overall immersion and believability of the film. This was one of those rare found footage movies that left me wanting more when it ended. But I guess I'll have to be happy with a brief post-credit scene here, so make sure you stick around for that. Don't want to spoil much here, but Howard's Mill is a well-researched, mid-budget mock doc that hit all the right notes while offering up a pretty unforgettable central mystery.
Number 45, Life of Belle.
Stop! Don't open your eyes! The game is to keep them closed, okay?
Usually I am pretty turned off by the super cheap found footage offerings that vaguely resemble Paranormal Activity at this point. I mean, I've seen a million of them, but holy shit, I am glad I stuck with The Life of Belle, because it turned out to be an absolutely terrifying slice of familial horror. This movie was really unafraid to, go there, with some twists in it that were honestly hard to watch. I want to keep the review here vague on purpose because what few elements this movie has should be kept a surprise to the viewer. Definite trigger warning for those of us who can't stomach violence against children, but beyond that, you'll have to experience the frankly chilling and rattling Life of Belle for yourself. Besides some wooden performances, some bad audio, and an obvious shoestring budget, this was a damaging, truly frightening, and surprisingly vicious found footage movie.
Number 44, The Possession of Michael King.
The possession genre is definitely a category of found footage that seems to be overloaded at the moment. And while there have been fantastic entries into the possession subgenre, like The Taking of Deborah Logan and many others, the possession of Michael King still does its absolute damnedest to prove why it needed to exist. Because this one is brutal.
Where are you? Daddy's coming to find you.
Like many great supernatural found footage yarns, the possession of Michael King centers around a protagonist who has devoted his life to debunking the paranormal. This is a trope used heavily in found footage movies like this, but in this case, they use a tragic accident in the protagonist's life to drive his ambition towards exposing the supernatural as nothing more than a farce. Problem is, Michael King decides to tempt the fates to find proof, volunteering for multiple demonic and supernatural rituals solely to prove that they do not work. Well, I hate to kind of spoil anything about this movie, but Michael's attempt to laugh in the face of the paranormal ultimately backfires in stunningly brutal fashion. The possession of Michael King didn't exactly introduce much new to the genre, but it executed its story with a level of uber violence and severity that landed and often gave me goosebumps. The possession of Michael King should easily join the upper echelon of found footage horror classics, offering an unforgettable story about testing one's faith against all odds and common sense. A really effective, chilling, and grim found footage movie that you shouldn't miss.
Number 43, Senritsu Kaiki File Kawasugi.
Senritsu Kaiki roughly translates to The Scary and Weird Files, a rather apt description of this amazing 10-part series from the director of the found footage classic Noroi: The Curse, in a series that plays like a brilliant mashup between the X-Files and the J-horror film genre. So if you ever wanted to see The Ring by way of Mulder and Scully, this found footage series will scratch that particular itch. Following a team of eccentric paranormal investigators and their trusty cameraman, the Senritsu Kaiki team begins each episode by watching a submitted tape of the paranormal, which typically leads to an increasingly wild adventure as the team investigates. This is a great series to immerse yourself in if you're a fan of urban legends, Japanese paranormal lore, or if you're just a fan of found footage ghost stories. Splitting its runtime between mockumentary-style investigations and the actual submitted found footage itself, this series tells a handful of eclectic, scary, and bizarre stories, while slowly developing the characters of the investigators themselves in frankly crazy and interesting ways. The fact that there is an overarching plot to this series, even as it episodically plays out across different cases, is a great way to keep the viewer invested in the series as a whole. I found myself actually really liking these oddball agents of the paranormal as their lives become increasingly chaotic and creepy the more they interact with the paranormal activity. The bottom line is this is a free series that is solid as fuck and is full of hour and 10-minute long plus entries that all play like little mini movies. A great time investment for found footage fans, and despite some really bizarre CGI at points, this can be a really scary and really engaging series. Maybe I'll do a review of all of them on my channel and rank them at some point. We'll see, but for now, check this out.
Number 42, Hangar 10.
Hangar 10 starts with the framework of a traditional Blair Witch knockoff and then takes its narrative to some truly satisfying conclusions. The amazing homespun special effects only seem to escalate as the plot naturally thickens. And with the scares starting early on in this one, Hangar 10 hooks you right from the get-go. This one seems to dip into many of the best tropes of the genre, pulling a Blair Witch-style Lost in the Woods caper beneath a UFO/government conspiracy yarn. The effects, locales, and camera work in this one are all top-notch, with some absolutely staggering shots of the alien visitors, as well as some set pieces that look like they were pulled right out of Christopher Nolan's Insomnia. This is a no-frills, no-bullshit found footage film with plenty of meat on its bones, chaos abound, great scares, and some pervasively dark atmosphere. Absolutely worth the ride.
Number 41, Frankenstein's Army.
This movie follows a platoon of Russian soldiers as they confront an evil Nazi scientist version of Dr. Frankenstein, complete with metal and flesh-fused monsters and some truly horrific practical effects and creature suits. Once again, the found footage horror period piece reigns supreme, transporting you to World War II in a way that barely other films can. We follow a war documentarian as he and his fellow soldiers fall hopelessly into enemy territory. But it's an enemy that they could have never fathomed in their worst nightmares. This movie plays a lot like the bad robot movie Overlord from a couple years ago, echoing the best of the Castle Wolfenstein Nazi experimentation subgenre, while offering up plenty of original and horrific designs all its own. This might not be the deepest movie out there, but it's full of horrifically realized World War II environments, convincing and disgusting monsters, and a whole lot of gritty gore. This movie felt a bit more high budget than the usual found footage affair, landing in that Jerusalem and Cloverfield sweet spot when you're getting the best of both blockbuster and found footage level budgets. This movie could have cost $2 million or $20 million, and that's surely part of the charm and skill of the people who made it. If you love war movies, if you love Nazi lore horror, then look no further than Frankenstein's Army.
Number 40, Home Movie.
I love the creepy kid movie subgenre, even though it has its fair share of repeats and duds. When it's done right, creepy kid horror plays into the psychologically torturous realization of watching your child, who you raised and nourished, suddenly become a monster, a murderer, or something even worse. MOM, Mother of Monsters, from my last list dealt with this topic really well, but Home Movie is a great documentation of this horrifying process of acceptance, as two parents slowly document their children's descent into pure evil over the course of several months in a remote country home in the woods. The setting is downright eerie, the kids are eerier, and the parents, who are a priest and a doctor respectively, are both so initially grating that you're kinda rooting for the kids to get the better of them. Thankfully, as this one rolls on, the parents' performances shift from kooky and annoying to grief-stricken and mortified, as both parents seem to be dealing with the shock of their situation in different and destructive ways. A good character study and a rock-solid creepy kid movie, this is a truly scary and ultimately satisfying found-footage horror movie. And look, while we're here, I'd be absolutely remiss if I didn't offer up a second recommendation here, because it's another creepy kid movie from the same year of 2008. No, this one isn't found footage, but if you want to check out one of the best creepy kid movies ever made, make sure to check out The Children. It's a British horror movie, it's super underrated, and it's one of the goriest and most terrifying horror movies of the 2000s. Watching The Children and Home Movie here back to back will keep you up at night, and probably well stocked on Plan B.
Number 39, Dashcam.
2020's COVID-era chiller Host showed up earlier in my found footage list videos. A movie which I thought was an actually scary, actually savage screen-life horror experience that left a huge impression on me at the time. Well, it looks like director Rob Savage has continued his hot streak with the vicious, tactile, and high-octane horror movie Dashcam. Following an insipidly annoying anti-masker live streamer during the height of lockdown, this may feel like one of those found footage movies all but begging you to turn it off in its first half an hour. But those brave enough to endure lead character Annie's right-wing shit-posting shenanigans,
this place is like a living hell for something with a 99.6 recovery rate,
will be rewarded with a truly unexpected and honestly amazing horror film. It is beyond impressive and truly admirable how much mayhem, gore, and creature effects moments they were able to capture from a POV camera on Annie's hat, along with a camera strapped to the dashboard of her car, leaving me often wondering how on earth they actually captured some of this footage without a massive multi-million-dollar budget. Mean-spirited, high-energy, and full of batshit developments that had me grinning ear to ear, Dashcam is a movie that starts as an annoying and headache-inducing experience, but eventually grows into a phantasmagoria of bombastic and bloody POV horror. This movie was unapologetically punk rock and feels like a music video mixed with a great segment from the VHS anthology series. A truly brutal and wholly worthwhile found footage hidden gem.
Number 38. They're watching.
They've been here since this morning.
This movie has all the hallmarks of a truly memorable found footage film, from a solidly unique setup in a remote location to some terrifically gory special effects along the way. It's clear that They're Watching is a movie that was made with an above-average budget, documenting an American film crew from a fictional international house-flipping TV show as they travel to the dank and remote hills of Moldova for their new segment. This movie has a surprising wealth of humor, some actually well-drawn characters, and a creepy setting packed with unique and frightening lore. You know, sometimes the make-or-break quality of a found-footage horror movie only reveals itself in the final 20 minutes of the film. And while this movie loads most of its brutality and huge set pieces into that final stretch, the lead-up was surprisingly fun and engaging as well. This felt like a found-footage version of Midsommar with shades of Resident Evil 4 and a bit of Eli Roth's Hostel mixed in for good measure. As an American film crew full of horny and goofy stoners trigger a series of cultural faux pas in a remote village that seem to reveal the local townsfolk as anything but friendly neighbors. This movie has a surprisingly solid musical score, which is rare for the genre and can sometimes be really distracting. But in this, it mixes perfectly with the film's general sense of humor and foreign whimsy. And about that final stretch, holy shit. The last 20 minutes of this movie were an unexpectedly insane ride, chock full of huge special effects moments that most movies in this genre would be scared to even attempt. The end of this movie reminded me of Evil Dead 2013's final act Bloodbath, mixed with the general insanity of the end of Cabin in the Woods. Just total mayhem here, capping off a truly solid, entertaining, funny, and unexpectedly insane found footage horror movie that I couldn't believe had passed under my radar. An awesome found footage horror gem.
Number 37. Mind, body, spirit.
And I'm taking this with me. Hey! I'm deleting it out!
Mind, Body, Spirit is a movie that uses devilishly clever camera work, well-earned scares, and an overall eerie atmosphere to conjure one of the best found-footage horror films in recent memory. The film follows Anya, an aspiring wellness influencer, as she moves into her late grandmother's house and sets up shop to further her career in online self-help classes through yoga, meditation, and other New Age activities. When she discovers a secret room in her grandmother's attic, the demons of her family's past literally come to light, which kicks off one of the most tense and creative found footage movies out there. While the setting and plot is rather simple, the guys who directed this movie utilized some absolutely brilliant cinematography, mixed with some awe-inspiring in-camera trickery to set this movie a cut above the average found footage romp. This movie is legit frightening, and it wastes no time as the tension of the premise comes to fruition in the first 10 minutes of the film, which steadily builds and never lets up until the credits roll. Moments of violence, brutality, psychedelic spirituality, and outright demonic mayhem punctuate the entire runtime of Mind, Body, Spirit, leaving me basically breathless by the time the movie concluded. Full of convincing fake ads for wellness channels, it's clear that the guys who made this movie wanted to craft a convincing piece of fake influencer content, and they exceeded perfectly with this film in all notable categories. This is not only a great found footage film, but a great horror film in general, and I'll be gladly recommending this nerve-jangling piece of found footage glory for years to come. So namaste your way to this movie ASAP, found footage fans. This one is a real winner.
Number 36, Grave Encounters.
This one is maybe a bit too revered at this point to include on a deep dive list, but I'm throwing it in here anyway in case any of you newbies have crossed the border early. Grave Encounters is one of the most pivotal found footage phantasmagorias. A total nightmare that starts with a comedic and self-aware vibe before crashing headlong into disorientation, huge scares, and iconic VFX that paved the way for about 1 billion ripoffs, especially of Disc Boy. Woo! While Grave Encounters isn't as well known as the Wreck series, it's still absolutely monumental in the formation and later tropes of the found footage movies to come. This is just a classic haunted asylum film that takes a hubris-filled ghost hunter charlatan and gives him the ride of his fucking life. This and the sequel are absolutely worth a watch and are some of the best pieces of content this genre has to offer. Check them out. Canadian, they're Canadian.
Number 35, Spree.
Spree is starring Joe Keery from Stranger Things as the lead character Kurt, but the supporting players of this film are absolutely great as well. Kyle Mooney and Sashir Zameda from SNL are featured supporting characters in this movie. And David Arquette plays a pretty deep and conflicted character in this as well, playing the lead character Kurt's dad, who has problems of his own. Cast aside, Spree is a great comment on the pangs and ills of our social media-obsessed world, reminding me of the recent and incredible Ingrid Goes West with Aubrey Plaza, mixed with the plot of the Duplass's found footage gem Creep. Basically, our lead character Kurt is an ego-bruised loner obsessed with social media who can't ever seem to crack the algorithm. Anyway, nobody ever notices Kurt, let alone Kurt's World, his online moniker and channel, that leads our man Kurt to do some very dark, very unwell, very Taxi Driver, American Psycho-esque things. This movie is funny, shockingly violent, pretty damn hip, and has an awesome synth-pumping soundtrack that I really loved. Always love a found footage movie where you are locked into the ego and mind of a deeply unhinged person, in the way that found footage classics like Be My Cat and Creep 1 and 2 have pulled off perfectly. Spree is a great movie to end this list on because it truly has something for everyone who loves this genre. And it's a great example of where the found footage genre is starting to head to in the future, with fantastic movies like Host from 2020 or the John Chu Search series, where we're kind of evolving from found footage to computer captures, laptop streams, gaming streams, and things that are more modern and realistic in this day and age. In this film, the central character, who's an Uber driver, films his entire spree using cameras that he says are for his own safety in his Uber, which is something that we see all the time now. So it's great to see the found footage genre kind of taking a step into a more modern lens and adapting with the times, because there was a little while there where I thought, I don't know how long we'll be getting these movies. Anyway, Spree, really enjoyable, really crazy, and full of some great performances and moments.
Number 34, Hungerford.
So this is Hungerford.
I always appreciate found footage movies like 2014's Hungerford that try to do a little bit of everything by mixing genres and offering up memorable set pieces and big swings at large-scale action. Reminiscent of other sci-fi action found footage movies like The Phoenix Incident or Jerusalem, Hungerford is a super ambitious low-budget film with blockbuster aspirations.
Documenting the fallout from an alien invasion on a group of 4 friends, this is a satisfying sci-fi action romp with a unique B-movie villain and some escalatingly awesome set pieces. I can't believe I'd never seen or even heard of this movie, and it made me long for a time when found footage movies like this would have theatrical runs, because this would have rocked on a big screen. Now, if you can somehow find this movie, God bless you, it's a real challenge, especially if you live in the US, but I assure you it is worth the effort spent. Check out Hungerford before the invasion begins.
Number 33, Apollo 18.
Apollo 18 is one of the few movies on this list to actually hit theaters. Not that you probably would remember, though, because it was critically maligned and a box office flop. But for those found footage completionists who are curious, Apollo 18 is one of the most unique and interesting entries on this list. Chronicling the fraught, fictional return to the moon by the Apollo 18 shuttle in 1974. This movie is a rare instance of a found footage period piece. The lengths that they seemingly went to for authenticity here are staggering, and most of the film being composed of the shuttle's seemingly authentic security cameras gives everything a haunting and real perspective. Even the footage itself here has a clear 70s aesthetic that aids the overall kitsch and believability of the setting, dropping you into a doomed mission to space that feels as real as it is claustrophobically unsettling. This is the kind of found footage film that truly engrosses and entraps the viewer into a situation they can't escape, and is one of the only films on this list with a budget and ambition to literally leave planet Earth. Fans of sci-fi horror ought to gravitate to this one as soon as possible.
Number 32, Jerusalem.
Jerusalem has a hefty helping of the ingredients that makes the best movies in the found footage genre stand out. It's got an exotic setting in the old city of Jerusalem, a unique and startling mythos of creatures achieved through clever homespun VFX, and a sense of chaos that starts small and ends up snowballing into a citywide panic that the film captures perfectly. It's rare for a found footage movie's ambition to reach a scope that envelops a whole city like this, with only sparse other examples like Cloverfield trying to go this big. This is a low-budget, shoddily acted, but ultimately gripping found footage movie that kicks off the madness early and never lets up. Fans of biblical chaos and monster movies will enjoy this slight but highly entertaining reckoning.
Number 31, Incident at Loch Ness.
The tone of our next film, Incident at Loch Ness, is more satirical and comical than it is terrifying. But if you're willing to watch a found footage movie with more on its mind than simple scares, check it out. This one follows real-life filmmaker Werner Herzog, playing himself, as he embarks on a deep and meaningful quest to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster. Imagine one of his classic documentaries like Cave of Wonders or Fire Within, but with a sea monster. But this isn't actually that film. The Incident at Loch Ness is a making-of mockumentary of that film. A found footage movie inside of a movie directed by X-Men/Avengers/Ready Player One screenwriter Zach Penn, who also plays a horrifically greedy, stupid, out-of-control version of himself in the film as well. This is a great meta inside a meta half-comedy of sorts, with an end that plays homage to its found footage roots successfully. Just an absolute hoot, especially as a fan of Werner Herzog. We covered this one on the Movie Blues podcast in greater detail, so make sure to check out that adjoining episode as well.
Number 30, Hangman.
While this one didn't offer up much out of the ordinary for the genre, Hangman from 2016 managed to be a rather efficient, ultimately unsettling suburban stalker film that I'm still kind of thinking about to this day.
To this day!
The Miller family returns from a 2-week vacation to find that their family home has been ransacked and turned upside down by a mysterious squatter.
Any homeowner is going to feel relatable chills watching this movie as the hangman invades the Miller's life by setting up a surveillance station in the attic of the family's home, where he slips in and out of all day and night long to stalk different members of the family. The hangman begins to monitor the Millers with a litany of spy cameras he sets up in every room of the house while the family was away, and that is the POV of the entire film. The hangman himself is a pretty unique and vicious antagonist, playing with the family for weeks by exposing their secrets and planting evidence throughout their house to unravel the Millers as they endure their invasive nightmare. Creepy, convincingly acted, and eventually quite shocking, Hangman is a movie that doesn't pull any punches as it portrays the disintegration of a normal family at the hands of a prolific maniac. This one will have you paranoid in your own home, and if you can muster up the courage, you'll be checking your attic when the credits finally roll.
Number 29, Cruiser.
Vicious, shocking, and horrifically tense, Cruiser follows a maniac in a stolen cop car as he goes on a rampage across an unsuspecting town over a night of absolute terror. This might be one of the very few found footage movies that could be considered an outright slasher, and the moments of violence peppered throughout this rather short film range from abrupt and cruel to truly operatic and macabre. The use of actual police cars and dash cams adds to the terror and authenticity of this film, giving you a backseat ride through the depths of the killer's depravity. Unforgiving and brutally violent, this movie managed to make my jaw drop on a number of occasions. And it does a great job with upping the stakes and violence as the titular Cruiser rampages from place to place throughout the night-long massacre. The Cruiser himself is played with the kind of deep mania and morbid enthusiasm that you'd expect from the best and most memorable slasher icons. Not for the weak of heart, but definitely for those of us who need a massive jolt to the system. This movie was pure adrenaline and pure horror.
Number 28, Invited.
Jessica! Jessica!
As if the idea of a Zoom wedding isn't horrifying enough, Invited from 2024 takes this concept to brutal and nerve-shredding extremes. When a reluctant mother attends her daughter's Zoom elopement, she and the rest of her family in attendance quickly realize that the groom is part of a bizarre Russian cult with deadly intentions. This movie is actually written and produced by the husband and wife duo who created the Found TV app, and this isn't a case of those who can't do make apps, because this was easily one of the most audacious and excellent found footage horror films I've seen in recent memory. Invited goes to places that not a lot of other found footage filmmakers would dare go, producing some absolutely diabolical sequences in this movie that had my jaw on the floor in horror and disgust. This is the kind of found footage experience that will have you gasping and clapping alone in your living room, and is one of the most graphic yet rewarding horror films to come out of this genre in a minute. Rich character writing and a handful of wildly shocking moments makes Invited a new standout in the genre that just keeps on giving.
Number 27, Inner Demons.
Usually, elevated horror is something that doesn't often creep into the found footage subgenre, which makes Inner Demons from 2014 that much more special. The topics of drug abuse and addiction are tackled head-on in this frankly rattling found footage horror film that takes its topics seriously while still delivering shocking and effective scares. Carson is a struggling addict from a quaint religious family in California, but as her inner demons begin to ruin her life, an intervention is planned with a film crew in tow. Nobody believes Carson is actually possessed by a demon like she claims, because after all, why trust the word of an out-of-control addict? This smokescreen allows Carson's possession to go unchecked, and as she moves into a rehab clinic for detox, things quickly go from bad to way worse. This is a punchy, truly effective, and disturbing spin on the possession genre, with some solid acting and some deep thematic work along the way. This movie was handled seriously, and its escalation instills a fair amount of dread. The actors and performances here are committed and well fleshed out, and the horror aspects pack a serious wallop as Carson's addiction morphs into a deadly possession. Check this one out for a hell of a rehab stint.
Number 26, La Cueva.
Is La Cueva a good movie? Debatable. But is it a good found footage movie? Absolutely. If the primary aim of a potent found footage horror movie is to transport you into an inescapable first-person hellscape, then La Cueva surely achieves its goal. Of course, you're going to be saddled with a gaggle of insufferably annoying kids on a horny vacation, but once they decide to explore a hidden cave off the beaten path, this movie nosedives into the stuff of nightmares. For a movie that has no supernatural elements to speak of, La Cueva managed to make me feel more dread than any demon cult or any woods witch could. The cave these doofuses get themselves lost in isn't some vast open cavern, but it's instead a series of crawl tunnels, saltwater pools, and painfully low ceilings. I got some real first half of the Descent vibes from this entire movie, as we're locked for 4 days and lost hopelessly in the tightest space imaginable. They spend so much time looking for an exit in this movie that it almost feels like a liminal space horror video, as the cave just seems to feed into room after room forever. There are so many terrifying moments and set pieces in this movie, including a scene where a dude drops into a hole inside of the cave to try to swim his way out. And good God, does this shit look dicey to film. Like, was bro okay after this? As if that's not enough, then he swims down into the hole, and I can safely say that this is one of the most thalassophobic, claustrophobic sequences I've ever seen in any movie in my life. Good Lord, no. I would rather just fucking die in the cave. How did they film this? Other than that, this movie is a simple, well-filmed, and utterly horrifying survival thriller that just keeps getting bleaker by the minute. While La Cueva is a monster-free movie, there were still plenty of huge jump scares and terrifying horror elements mixed in to keep things regularly shocking. A simple, sleek, and effective survival movie that goes to some truly savage places.
Number 25, I Blame Society.
Killing all these people is starting to feel like work. It's not fun anymore.
Gotta say, outside of JWoww's recent found footage movie that I covered on this channel, the found footage genre is a mostly male-dominated space. That's why I found it so refreshing to see the 2020 film I Blame Society, directed and starring Gillian Wallace Horvat, a creepy and awkward character study anchored by a virtuoso performance of neurotic Jewish dread from Horvat herself. Knowing the found footage community, some of you will start this movie and then bail out because the lead actress is annoying. But I'd argue that that's absolutely the point. This is like Creep or Sorgoi Prakov or Be My Cat. I mean, you're not supposed to like this lady. Jillian is playing a raging narcissist, an amateur filmmaker who's probably on a couple different spectrums, and we watch as she documents her creative, personal, and mental downfall into complete crazy town.
And that is how you do a handcuff knot.
Spurred on by a comment made by her friend who said that Jillian would make a good murderer, Jillian decides to make a movie showing how she would allegedly commit the crime if she were to ever do it. It's very like OJ's book, If I Did It, but with a psychotically obsessed Jewish girl instead of the juice. And while flirting with these murderous ideas amidst a general mental and personal breakdown, Jillian begins blurring the lines between reality and fiction. I can't say enough about how pushy, memorable, and detestable Jillian's character is in this movie, and the film descends into a squirmy downfall that you simply cannot take your eyes away from. An actually funny and then actually deeply disturbing found footage movie from a female filmmaker who really makes this one of the best found footage movies on the entire list. I know it looks a little weird, but don't skip this one.
Number 24, The Children Under the House.
And what did you do last night?
Irrefutably original and surely unlike any found footage movie you've ever seen, The Children Under the House is an analog horror film solely comprised of children's drawings, therapists' notes, and text descriptions of a string of supernatural events. Like the recent Good Boy, or Presence, or Black Daruma, or In a Violent Nature, this is a story told in a format and from a perspective that we've never seen in a horror movie before. Without a human face in sight for its entire hour-and-a-half runtime, The Children Under the House takes the cliche of the haunted kid drawing scary stuff for their therapist and stretches it out to a feature-length runtime. While I didn't exactly love the third act here because it attempted to have a bigger and more cliched horror movie conclusion than I expected, the first hour or more of strictly drawings and narration were genuinely unsettling and convincingly presented. Never really expected to be so scared and unnerved by kids' drawings, but they are so realistically made and creepily foreboding that eventually they begin to burrow pretty deep under your skin. The filmmakers behind this movie obviously know that your imagination can produce horrors more potent than any CGI movie monster, leaving the heavy lifting up to the viewer to really scare themselves into picturing the movie in their minds from the comfort of their couch. And for the most part, this experiment is wildly successful because once this movie begins to click for you, you'll feel utterly engrossed by the ghost story that it's painting with nothing more than words and hand-drawn pictures. A truly interesting and frankly unique way to present a narrative, The Children Under the House is a chilling experiment that stands out as one of the most unique found footage experiences ever.
Number 23, Into the Storm.
After so much low-budget fare ingested while researching these videos for the past several years, it felt really good to revisit one of the few big-budget studio found footage movies to get a full-scale theatrical release with 2014's Into the Storm. This movie has some great camera work, killer tornado VFX, and an honestly great cast, like Disbro from The Hobbit and Dislady from The Walking Dead. Into the Storm has some honestly fantastic set pieces, which are really enhanced by the found footage format. I would honestly rather watch this movie than the recent Twisters, especially because this movie is much more frightening and the storms are way more vicious and cool. I mean, dude, look at the friggin' flame twister. This shit rules. An earnest and incredibly well-made disaster movie with some of the craziest effects ever seen in this genre. This movie is probably the second best tornado movie behind The Goat, and it's absolutely worth your time if you're even remotely a fan of tornadoes, found footage, and disaster movies in general. It's time to get swept up by Into the Storm.
Number 22, Host.
Host is a found footage film from the doomed year of 2020, and it's one of the finest pieces of content to come out of the COVID lockdown. During a time when film crews couldn't assemble and most productions had been outright canceled or halted, director Rob Savage spent 12 weeks directing his film over Zoom hardware. The cast and crew set up their own cameras, lighting, and stunts, and considering all of these wild limitations, Host is still a legitimately great horror film, genre and lockdown notwithstanding. It's no wonder that the director of this film was fast-tracked into a deal with Blumhouse that led to his recent effort Boogeyman, based on a Stephen King novella, which found critical and financial success. Host is the work of a creative, hungry, and determined director who pulled off a great modern-day update to the Paranormal Activity formula. A Zoom seance between socially deprived friends kicks off a series of escalating horrors, accompanied by excellently crafted jump scares. The Zoom/found footage format keeps you trapped in this demonic situation as things quickly spiral out of control. All sorts of social media filters, technologies, and chats are used against the characters in this film in a sinister and sadistic way. A nail-biting, realistic, and increasingly terrifying horror film that hammers you with tension until the credits finally roll. It's great to see a new, intense success of a found footage film made for pennies on the dollar, and bursting with great ideas.
Number 21, The Atticus Institute.
This is a riveting found footage horror movie, which not only benefits from its creative presentation, but also capitalizes on its period piece aspects as it takes place in the 1970s. Authentic and truly scary, the Atticus Institute documents a secret government team that is trying to study and ultimately weaponize a woman who's seemingly possessed by a demon. Not only do you get a fantastic government conspiracy/experimentation movie led by the actor who played Ethan, the creepy medical experimenter from Lost.
Oh, you're Ethan.
From Lost, yeah. Thanks for watching. I'm glad you're a fan.
You're the one who stole Claire's baby on Lost. I cannot let a child go home with you.
But you also get one of the strongest found footage possession movies ever, up there with The Taking of Deborah Logan and the best of the genre. This is a convincing, unsettling, and at times brutal found footage horror movie that will satisfy any fan of the genre, with some truly unnerving and horrifying moments throughout. The Atticus Institute has a solid budget, great performances, and is a fantastic example of the best that the found footage genre has to offer.
Number 20, The Last Horror Movie.
In each of my found footage list videos, I like to call out a true classic from early in the genre's lifespan. A movie that deserves to still be a part of the cultural conversation in found footage fandom discourse. So, congrats, you sickos, because we're doing The Last Horror Movie from 2003. This is the granddaddy of found footage movies like Capture, Kill, Release, Long Pigs, the Poughkeepsie Tapes, Creep, and on and on. We follow serial maniac Max and his recently hired assistant/cameraman as they document Max's utterly unhinged spree. That kind of feels an awful lot like American Psycho, especially with Bro both looking and sounding exactly like Christian Bale.
I'd say I do about 8, maybe 10 people a year. Men, women, I don't really care.
If you're able to vibe with that, then this is actually quite an opus of destruction that I found really compelling and consistently sinister. These movies only excel when you have a truly enigmatic lead, and actor and star Kevin Howarth is surely up to the task. With charisma and bravado, this dude oozes evil for an hour and a half, and he carries the movie throughout its disgusting and brutal vignettes. A rather layered character study of an unhinged psychopath, The Last Horror Movie is an utterly brutal but undeniably influential horror epic. It also has like a really cool conceit set up as a found footage movie. It's meant to be like he taped all of his crimes over a tape and then returned it to the video store and you've rented that tape. It's cute. You'll see. It's cute. Anyway, this movie's fucked up, but check it out.
Number 19, Afflicted.
Afflicted is one of the most energetic, action-packed films on this list. I don't want to spoil the central mythos or conceit in this one, but it involves two friends who are traveling around the world who come in contact with a supernatural force. What follows is a high-octane, gory GoPro ride full of incredible, daring shots that must have been some kind of synthesis between parkour and GoPro footage, with CGI stitching things together to make it flow. It's just a really crafty, badass, and bloody found footage movie with some great twists and some iconic moments. Great horror film, great action film, stellar found footage film.
Number 18, Operation Avalanche.
So you're gonna have to move like, well, just try it. Try leaping a bit, like this.
Director and star Matt Johnson now has made 2 incredibly unique found footage movies that have shown up on my channel. Once with his debut feature The Dirties, and now with his follow-up Operation Avalanche from 2016. Both of these movies subverted the usual found footage horror genre, offering up tense, disturbing, and truly original films that reveal Johnson as an immense talent who isn't just out to make a cheap scarefest. With Operation Avalanche, Johnson has constructed one of the most ambitious found footage period pieces ever, following 2 CIA recruits as they work their way up through the NASA program in the 1960s, eventually embedding themselves in the Apollo mission program, where they formulate a plan to help the government fake the moon landing itself. A tense, paranoid thriller emerges as Johnson and his colleague, who was also the secondary star of The Dirties, work under deep cover with technology they develop using Stanley Kubrick himself to devise a fake moon landing from scratch. We get to see them scout locations, work with special effects, and ultimately pull off the greatest farce in human history, all while the government and potential Russian spies attempt to derail and interfere with their work. This movie looks, feels, and sounds so genuine, from the classic-looking film stock to the period-perfect vehicles and costumes. Great care obviously went into the making of this film, and that attention to detail makes this movie as realistic as it is gripping to watch. Johnson displays a profound skill for making his lead characters insufferable and pushy in ways that lend tension to the entire film, as we are left wondering if Johnson has jeopardized the lives of himself and his crew while tirelessly working to create the great illusion of the moon landing. This is a smart, believable, and deviously clever found footage movie that proves that the genre can lend itself to so many other flavors and textures outside of the usual Paranormal Activity or Blair Witch style format. Operation Avalanche is a must-see for fans of the genre, for fans of conspiracies, and for those looking for a found footage movie able to push the limits of the format to amazing new heights. A found footage historical sci-fi masterpiece.
Number 17, Savage Land.
While this one almost borders on full-on mockumentary, the format of this film's most chilling moments are recovered from a found roll of still camera footage, so I'm gonna count this one. Savage Land follows a death row inmate, Francisco Salazar, who is accused of slaughtering the whole entire town of Sangre de Cristo literally overnight. All signs and evidence seem to point to his overwhelming guilt, and as the state of Texas begins to prepare for his inevitable execution, a roll of footage from a camera that Salazar claimed to have had the night of the massacre is turned in to an independent investigator. The photos from that found footage show a very different and utterly horrific account of what happened in Sangre de Cristo that night, and Savage Land is the brutal and chilling documentation of this otherworldly cosmic event. This is a tightly made, thinly budgeted, but absolutely terrifying found footage mockumentary film. The found footage sections of this movie were absolutely hair-raising and used still photography as a rarely used medium in the horror genre to really draw out some of this movie's best scares. Loved this one. What a unique film.
Number 16, Strange Harvest.
I covered this movie in its own video on my channel about a month ago, but Strange Harvest is so good that it bears repeating on this list. Easily up there with Lake Mungo and Savage Land as one of the top horror mockumentaries ever made, Strange Harvest is a chilling serial killer yarn spanning decades of crimes in San Bernardino County, California, that have stumped investigators and the families of the victims alike. As the murders begin ramping up again, the police begin digging into the identity of the killer, unleashing a web of cosmic horror and ritualistic crimes that defy belief and disgust the general public. This movie utilizes body cams, crime scene photography, webcams, interviews with the detectives, and even some long stretches of just good old-fashioned found footage to tell a very uniquely shocking story. Fans of true crime will adore this film, with the majority of the movie feeling so realistic that an average viewer shouldn't be blamed for confusing this with a genuine true crime doc before things get really crazy. From the director of the found footage horror classic Grave Encounters, Strange Harvest is another all-time great for the genre that will leave you guessing and breathless. Make no doubt about it, this is one of the best found footage horror experiences of 2025 and quite possibly one of the greatest mockumentaries ever made.
Number 15, The Dirties.
So this movie is basically like what if Gus Van Zant's Elephant plus found footage. So if the imagery or idea of a Columbine-like attack is too triggering for you, you may want to skip this one entirely. But if you're still here and you enjoy found footage movies that act as a chaotic, pitch-dark character study, then this one is a great watch. It seems like they went pretty far in the production value of this one, offering up an extremely realistic school environment that the two main characters suffer through as they devise their plan of attack on the bullies who haunt them, which they refer to as the Dirties. So it was a breath of fresh air to see such a dramatically effective little movie that tackles one of the most brutal subjects in the world right now.
and still retains a sense of humor and an overall sense of meta-commentary on, once again, the found footage genre that I felt very intellectually engaged by. This is ultimately a haunting, shocking, and memorable found footage movie that proves the power of the genre while delivering a true American nightmare.
This is like when Snake Eyes made that mistake.
Can you please foot? You're being insane.
Yeah, but it won't look as good unless I'm like
It doesn't matter how good it looks.
Number 14. A record of sweet murder.
So, yeah, this is the first time I've ever had two movies from the same director in the same found footage list video. But to be fair, I didn't realize that this was another Koji Shiraishi joint until the credits finally rolled. Once again, Shiraishi, the director of Noroi the Curse and Uru Hora from earlier on this list, remains one of the most pivotal and imaginative directors in the history of the found footage genre. And with a record of sweet murder, he presents his most graphic and unsettling vision yet. A South Korean reporter is contacted by an old childhood friend, a man who just escaped a mental institution where he's been since he was 10 years old. Luring the reporter and her cameraman to an abandoned apartment building, the deranged Park Sang-joon tells the reporter about how he has been commanded by a mysterious god to execute a rash of ritualistic killings for a bizarre and terrifying purpose. This is one of the only found footage films in history that attempts to be captured in one long take. And while I clocked maybe 5 or so secret hidden cuts throughout the film, it was still a pretty seamless and impressive experience that gave the movie this unsettling stage play caginess while being delivered in real time. Furthermore, this is a movie that takes place in one static location, and between that and the long take aspect, this is one of the most unique and ambitious found footage movies I've ever seen. Although I need to be frank up front here, a trigger warning for some really odd and disturbing sexual violence in this movie. Sadly, this was an element of the thing that really disrupted the experience for me and almost made me turn it off. But truthfully, the final act of this film is absolutely worth the agony it takes to get there, with one of the best final sections I've seen in a found footage movie in quite some time. A raw, brutal, and cleverly devised found footage film that was actually unforgettable, and further cements director Koji Shiraishi as a true visionary in the genre. A record of sweet murder was consistently nail-biting and had my attention from start to finish, delivering an absolute gut punch of a found footage experience with some incredible twists and reveals. This is another must-watch.
Number 13. Exhibit A.
It was an ordinary suburban close until just 3 days ago, but now number 10 will never again be the happy family home that neighbours assumed.
Exhibit A is a perfect example of how a simple premise, if executed seriously and populated with convincing actors, can make for some true nightmare fuel in the found footage genre. No ghosts, no demons, no faked moon landings here. It's just a simple story about a family slowly becoming unwound due to the reveal of damaging secrets that slowly tear everyone apart. This is the kind of thing you read about in the newspapers and can barely believe. Realistically portrayed in horrifying fashion as a seemingly tight-knit family is ripped to shreds under the towering financial stress and dark secrets finally coming to light. I won't spoil any of the actual dynamics of this one, but if you want to see a well-acted, horrifying, deeply stressful dissolution of a family down to its violent and upsetting core, then Exhibit A is a simple little horror movie that will stick to you like glue. This one had me gripping the side of my sofa more than once, as the dread and horrifying circumstances that tear the family apart go from bad to worse. This is a chilling, realistic, and ultimately upsetting film that will shock you and make you think twice about the secrets that are buried deep within most families on Earth. Exhibit A is a bare bones but unforgettable nightmare.
Number 12. Milk and Cereal.
Unlike a lot of the first half of this list, Milk and Cereal isn't a period piece. It isn't full of convincing monsters or hellacious spirits. It didn't look like it cost more than a couple $1,000s to produce. In fact, it's one of the few movies on this list that is straight up free to watch on YouTube. So I suggest that if you want to watch one of the most clever and shocking found footage horror movies in recent times, turn this video off, and then turn it back on, but turn this video off and watch this movie immediately. Giving away much or any of the plot here would surely involve spoiling the best elements of this film. So let's just say that this movie follows two college students as they pull off elaborate pranks against one another, which seem to only escalate in their severity and craziness as the movie goes on. Soon enough, Milk and Cereal takes a series of insane turns that recontextualizes everything you've seen in the movie, unleashing a plot about a vicious serial killer that will truly shock and unsettle you. I did not see basically anything in this movie coming, and at an hour-long runtime, this is one of the most brief, brutal, and effective found footage horror movies to land on this or any list from my channel thus far. This is truly a power hour that takes some hard lefts, and will leave you actually reeling by the time the credits roll. Further proof that to make a found footage classic, all you need is a series of great ideas and a crew and cast game to take things as far as humanly possible. Haunting, simple, and effective, like Be My Cat, a film for Anne, or the Duplass Brothers Creep series, Milk and Cereal will absolutely go down as one of the bright spots in recent found footage memory. Check it out immediately.
Number 11, M.O.M., Mother of Monsters.
Mom, Mother of Monsters is a film that begins with a mother's quest to expose her son as a potential psycho. But where it goes after the mother's investigation starts is something not worth spoiling. Safe to say the found footage format is used very cleverly in this film to reveal a lot about both the potentially psychotic son and his footage-obsessed mom. Nothing like an unreliable narrator to shake up a genre that directly relies on seeing the truth of the person holding the camera. Mom is a deeply challenging, thrilling, and ultimately haunting film that does a tremendous amount with the genre, supported by convincing and memorable performances from its lead actors. This is an absolutely riveting found footage experience in all ways, but it is probably triggering the way that The Dirties is because it deals with teenage school violence in a way that is pretty uniquely upsetting. Anyway, wow, what a movie. Check it out.
Number 10, Punishment Park.
There are few films that exist in our culture's history as pressing and relevant as Punishment Park, a 1971 found footage mockumentary that takes place in an alternate America where prisons are overrun, the populace is sick to death of their fascist overlords, and anti-war protesters are being treated with malice and execution. So, yeah, an alternate America. In this all-too-relevant American hellscape, political prisoners are offered a choice between incarceration or 3 days in Punishment Park, a 50-mile gauntlet through the desert where the goal is to reach a mounted American flag on top of a mountain to attain their freedom, or die trying. For any American, this movie reflects an eerily familiar political unrest, full of dialogue exchanges and imagery that is hair-raisingly close to our current dystopia.
At another time, the honorable thing or the right thing to do might be to be a policeman or to be president. Right now, I think the honorable thing to do is to be a criminal.
This is a scathing indictment of police brutality, governmental control, and a foreboding prediction of the downfall of American exceptionalism that feels all too real. A maddening and deeply intuitive look into the evils of the so-called greatest country on Earth, and a film that still acts as a perfect mirror to our crumbling society over 50 years after its release. Punishment Park is a pivotal and foundational found footage movie that is both a riveting historical document and a prescient prediction of things to come.
Number 9, Be My Cat, a film for Anne.
As a huge found footage fan myself, I hadn't even heard of this movie until last year. This 2015 film, which is available for free on YouTube, doesn't have any flashy effects, doesn't have a runaway ambition beyond its means, and doesn't have any big-name actors in it to draw in general audiences. What Be My Cat does have is the ability to absolutely unsettle you with none of these extraneous elements. This movie cuts to the core of what makes found footage and independent cinema in general so valuable as an art form. Be My Cat is proof positive that with just a camera and some incredibly nuanced camera work, you can make a horror found footage movie more effective than half of the mainstream horror releases that hit theaters. Be My Cat is a character study, a true exploration into the mind of a disturbed person, in a way that only found footage could provide.
The sparse plot of Be My Cat is presented through found footage, in this case belonging to a peculiar Romanian loner named Adrian, who is obsessed with film, and more specifically with the actress Anne Hathaway. Through the video diaries, we come to understand that Adrian wants to shoot some test scenes with different Romanian actresses so that he can send the footage to Anne in hopes of impressing her. But as these video logs continue, we begin to see the morbid and disturbed layers of our protagonist begin to unfurl, and Adrian has unknowingly become psychotically obsessed with the potential of working with Hathaway. What plays out next I won't spoil for you, but what I can say with certainty is that while Be My Cat is mostly devoid of effects and gore, the implication and tension that this film plays with are far more haunting than any Saw sequel or Conjuring film. There's something so positively unsettling about being literally in the hands of Adrian for the whole film, a point of view that is unreliable as it is maniacal. Director and star Adrian Sofei absolutely nails his first feature here, using the least amount of resources of any film on this entire list. There are shades of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer here, and even some American Psycho vibes throughout, as we watch the glee and disassociation of a person who cannot help themselves from becoming more and more sadistic. In terms of character study, not to be insanely hyperbolic, but Adrian does for his protagonist what Heath Ledger sort of did for the Joker, offering up a performance where every line, every look, every smile is informed by the twisted pathos on the inside. Adrian's performance here is simply unforgettable, and I value Be My Cat as much as any recent revelation in the horror genre. This is a worthy, unsettling, and downright brilliant found footage film that any fan of the genre should drop everything for and experience for themselves. A perfect example of what this genre has to offer, Be My Cat will transport you directly into the mind of a man who has stepped over the edge of sanity, offering no relief as a viewer from the mounting tension until the credits finally roll. Authentic, unforgettable, and so creepy and genuine that it seems real, Be My Cat is a forgotten found footage masterpiece. After seeing this one for the first time, I immediately covered Be My Cat on the Movie Blues podcast, and then blindly reached out to Adrian for an interview, and to my delight, he graciously accepted. Just to be clear, I didn't pick this movie as my top choice because I got the chance to speak to Adrian. I reached out to him in the first place because I was simply so blown away by this film that I felt like no one had ever seen. Films like this are the reason that this list exists in the first place. Adrian has a real cinematic voice and is an incredible method actor, and I was pleased to find out that Be My Cat is the first of a proposed trilogy. With his follow-up, We Put the World to Sleep, coming out sometime this year, so keep an eye out for that as well.
Number 8. The Medium.
From the writer of the excellent horror film The Wailing from 2016, The Medium is a found footage mockumentary that takes place in the Isan region of Thailand, where a shaman must deal with the fact that her nephew is being spiritually groomed as her replacement. Similar to Incantation, which was the #1 selection in my last video, the best found footage foreign horror movies go to a great length to immerse you in the cultural spirituality of the place they take place in, such as Thailand for this movie, The Medium, transporting you to a world that is beautifully illustrated in a way that draws you in and educates you while scaring the shit out of you at the same time. This is one of the longest, beefiest found footage movies I've ever seen, stretching past the 2-hour runtime with one horrific crescendo after another. There's like 3 whole movies in this movie, and all 3 of them are deeply involving and terrifying. You really feel for these characters, for the horrors and the possessions and spiritual deaths that they endure. And it's a movie that you'll be mulling over long after the credits roll. This is a gorgeous movie with a fascinating locale, the camera work is tasteful and insistent, and the setting and characters are believable and fully fleshed out. With a great sense of geography, horror, and spirituality, this is not only a great found footage film, but downright one of the best horror movies of the decade. Let's get it started with the extremely hyperbolic comparison that Lake Mungo is the Hereditary of found footage movies. Like that film, Lake Mungo's conflicts are deeply steeped in its character's profound grief following a tragic loss, and how that loss causes the family to act erratically and turn in on each other. This movie feels shockingly genuine, and it's full of grief-stricken performances that sell the movie's central conceit. When things eventually do go bump in the night, Lake Mungo unleashes some insanely tense segments and moments, including a singular scare scene at the end of the film that will absolutely stay with me forever. Like Girl in the Closet of the Ring forever. All around, this is one of the most believable, compelling, shocking, and memorable found footage films ever produced. An absolute knockout that will keep you riveted until the film's morbid climax.
Number 6. Lola.
Lola is an alternative history sci-fi found footage period piece. The documentation of two sisters in 1938 who invent a machine that is capable of intercepting radio and TV signals from the future. This movie is easily one of the most ambitious found footage movies I've ever seen. The scope of this film is simply incredible, seamlessly blending subtle special effects with actual wartime footage, presenting an epic canvas of destruction as the sisters alter history through their meddling and predictions. So far, the budget for Lola has yet to be published, but it's made so expertly that I'd believe you if you told me this film cost $10 million or $80 million. The filmmaking sleight of hand on display here is simply that good. This is the kind of movie that makes you believe in the timeless possibilities of the found footage genre, and is easily one of the most convincingly acted, gorgeously shot found footage movies ever. I mean, look at like any frame from this movie. This is cinema. Brimming with great sci-fi ideas and incredible performances, Lola is a moving and triumphant genre masterpiece. Just when I thought I had seen the best that this genre has to offer, bam, check Lola out now.
Number 5. Europa Report.
Europa Report stretches the found footage and mixed media footage medium to new heights. This one really shoots for the stars, and its ambition is matched by its scope and research. This is like 2001: A Space Odyssey for the found footage genre, and really goes out of its way to tell a riveting, big-budget science fiction tale on an otherwise threadbare budget. I mean, this movie was filmed in Brooklyn, which is just truly wild to think about. And it's got Vickis van der Merwe from District 9 and a score by Bear McCreary of The Walking Dead fame. The filmmakers also did a lot of specific research using graphs and designs taken directly from NASA. This is maybe one of the most legit, both critically and in its reception, found footage movies ever, and it deserves a strong cult following from sci-fi fans and general audiences alike. A found footage classic.
Number 4. Butterfly Kisses.
This is an absolute Russian doll of movies inside of movies, following a documentary crew as it follows a wedding video producer as he cuts together a mysterious box full of found footage that was recovered in a garage and given to him. Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but this movie is positively loaded with meta-commentary on found footage as a genre, the implications of using real-life found footage as entertainment, all while juggling multiple time periods and a yarn about a cryptid that lives in a tunnel. In some ways, this movie reminded me of The Empty Man, in that Butterfly Kisses is this dense, mysterious yarn that seems to just keep turning and unveiling in its cosmic dread as it went on. It was cool to see the director of the Blair Witch Project, Eduardo Sanchez, pop up in this movie, which kind of felt appropriate considering this was such a monumental introspection and homage to the genre as a whole. Just a phenomenal, scary, and unnerving experience, and the plight of the central character in this one had me literally choked up with aggravation and dismay by the end of the film. One of the best, most effective found footage movies ever, and a movie that clearly feels crafted by people who had pretty big brains on the subject and filmmaking at large. This one is a must.
Number 3. Incantation.
This movie is a breezy and terrifying hybrid of movies like The Ring, The Blair Witch Project, and even reminded me once again on this list of The Empty Man, one of the best horror movies of the decade, in that it had a deep and disturbing mythology and simply kept peeling back its layers until the gruesome finish. Like that film, Incantation has this whole mythology about ancient, almost Lovecraftian gods that I found truly unique and utterly fascinating. This film,
unlike almost all found footage films, was also presented completely chronologically out of order. This allowed for some intense narrative moments, crazy twists, and reveals that use this format to really unnerve the audience and keep the viewer on edge. Incantation is a terrifying, beautifully filmed and haunting found footage film that had long sections that reminded me of Resident Evil 4 and Village, as well as allusions to everything from J-horror to possession, covering a wide gamut of horror ideas usually found in these films. Incantation is a instant found footage horror classic, and it should absolutely be the first film that you investigate from this list if you want to truly spook yourself out. Enjoy.
Number 2, Sorgoi Prakov.
Good morning, everybody.
Sadistic, revolting, existentially horrifying, and downright vicious. My European Dream is a movie that will rattle even the most hardened found footage fanatics down to their core. Other than the Creep series or the fantastic Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, there is no greater example in the found footage genre of a movie that chronicles psychopathy and insanity as pitch perfectly as this film. My European Dream follows self-professed documentarian Sorgoi as he travels to Paris to make a movie examining his pursuit of the European dream. But as his funds and sanity slowly dwindle, Sorgoi is exposed to the dark side of civilization itself, plunging himself downward into a spiral of insanity that makes Britney Spears' descent into crazy seem like an absolute cakewalk. There's something so horrifying and demented about this movie, and it gave me the same feelings of woozy unease as a novel like American Psycho once did for me in high school. This is unforgiving, relentless mania filmed by a man who's detaching from his humanity right before our eyes. Comments on class disparity between foreign countries, isolationism suffered by the homeless and the unwell, and delusions of psychopathic grandeur are all explored as we watch Sorgoi sink into the kind of soulless, mindless animal that only those who have touched the darkest parts of the human condition could ever relate to. Trigger warning for absolutely everything here, as this disgusting, revolting, and totally shocking diary of a man losing his grip with sanity is displayed in every graphic way imaginable. This is a hard movie to make it through and walk away from unscathed, but it stands as a testament to the intimate power that a found footage movie can take on when dealing with an unreliable, obsessed, and in this case, psychopathic narrator. Good luck with this one, guys. This is for the hardest wills and the strongest stomachs only. A found footage horror masterpiece and an unforgettable ride into hell.
Number 1, Man Bites Dog.
We've done it, guys. We have reached my 100th found footage recommendation on this channel. And for such an important number, I've decided to recommend one of the most important found footage movies ever made, 1992's Man Bites Dog. This Belgian French-language film follows the chaotically nihilistic Benoit, a mentally deranged serial killer who is plaguing the countryside of his hometown as a documentary crew follows him during his unforgiving spree. This movie is presented in glorious black and white 16mm film, and it shows because every frame of this movie looks like it's a painting. The contrast of the black and white image plays perfectly with the brutalist architecture of the time, and while this film had next to no budget, it is in a class of its own visually. So many movies owe their structure and identity to Man Bites Dog, most notably Creep, Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, Sorgoi Prakov, and hell, even American Psycho. Pretty much any film or found footage movie about a serial killing lunatic. Benoit is such a charismatic, unsuspecting psychopath who derives morbid pleasure from his work, and you can see his character type as an influence on so many serial killer movies to come after. This movie is beloved by Quentin Tarantino, Steve Buscemi, and is part of the Criterion Collection as well. Most importantly, this is an unshakable pillar of found footage, as important to the current state of the genre as the Blair Witch Project, or Paranormal Activity, or Cannibal Holocaust. Man Bites Dog is one of the first truly stellar examples of how to make a found footage movie on a shoestring budget, and is the blueprint for thousands of movies and TV shows to follow in its wake. Most importantly, it's just a fantastic movie, full of bombastically violent set pieces and also montages where There's more happening in the span of 30 seconds than happens in most found footage movies in 2025. This is a movie that paints Benoit's insanity as something hilarious, morbid, tangible, and terrifying. Man Bites Dog is one of the most important serial killer movies ever made and is surely in my top 5 most influential films in the found footage genre. So it is my utmost pleasure to end my run of 100 hidden gems that I've worked on now for over 2 years on this channel with this monumental classic that all of you should experience. So that's it, folks. That is the list of 100 hidden gems. And before you start thinking that I'm heading into early retirement, just know that I have already started working on my next list of 200. What found footage movies do you think should make that list that you didn't see on this one? Let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll check it out and it'll end up in my next video. Other than that, I hope you have a blessed holiday and a happy new year. If you've liked or commented on or shared any of my found footage list videos or any of the videos at all on my channel, just know that I really, truly appreciate you. And with that being said, I implore you to stick around in 2026 and keep your eyes on the movie Blues because there is lots of great content to come. See you soon, folks. Bye.
Because I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I've seen all your movies, and I love your movies, and I think you're the best.